Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you are having a wonderful Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. We're starting off this week right with another Menendez Monday, or with today's testimony, another Mustache Monday. So welcome back. And for those of you that were not, I think last Monday was when I debuted the IndyCam. So hang on a second. I just realized my microphone was not up to me. I apologize. Why do I keep doing that? So yeah, Indy is on the IndyCam at the moment. We'll see if she stays there. She probably won't. Realistically, she can't stay there for the full 3 or 4 hours or however long these streams go for. But we will see how long that she will be there for. So long as she's up there, we will we'll keep her on screen. How's that, Indy Bear? Okay. Anyhow, let's say hi to some folks in the chat and then we'll get started. So we've got Stephanie Olson. Good morning, everyone. I'll be back later this morning to dive in. Wonderful. And using some of those members only emojis. Oh, and there she goes. Where are you going? She's lying down on the ground. Is that where you go? Yeah, there you go. All right. Nice and relaxed. She'll be back. Anyhow, so I haven't yet updated the member emojis that were new as of Friday. So, but they're there. So if you are a member and you weren't there on Friday, check them out. There's some new member emojis in there. Gwendolyn SS, hello everyone. Hello. Nick Wilson, hey all. Jan E. Wallace, good afternoon, everyone. Elise Lynch, hi guys. Hey. Jan E. Wallace, thank goodness we're done with Oziel. He was creeping me out so much. Yes, we are done. We are done with him. And we have Detective Zoller again today. So he has been on the stand before. You probably will recognize him. Yeah, so we'll I mean, it's the fact that they are bringing witnesses in and out all the time is to me very frustrating, because I want this to be put on as like a single narrative, but I understand that this was a very long trial. They probably were dealing with competing schedules and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but yeah, at least we're done with Dr. Oziel. Nicole Christine, morning, you guys. Happy Monday. Just remembered it's BitBoy's hearing day and I got excited. Yes, we are. I assume that while we're streaming today, there will be news coming out from the Monday morning hearing for Ben Armstrong, also known as BitBoy Crypto. So we will see what that's all about. So alrighty. Robbie Dobby, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Gamer Deco. Menendez Monday. Anna B. Hi, chat. Sandra Ramirez, good morning, fellow biters. Candace Hoban, good morning from rural California. Tony P, good morning, y'all. Only going to be here for a bit, taking kiddo number 3 to the doctors in a bit. Well, good luck with that. See you later, possibly when you get back eventually. So anyhow, all right. I'm so sorry I can't say hi to everybody in the chat at this point. We've got to get moving, right? What we're here for is the Menendez trial. So let's see here. Okay, so we've got today Detective Zoller, and I think he is going to be taking up all of our time today. So we'll see. To be honest, it's been long enough that I don't fully remember what he testified to before. There was nothing terribly remarkable that stuck out to me, but we'll see how this goes moving forward. So, all right, let's do, shall we?
Or if.
Yeah. We want to put on the September 17th statement of Erik Menendez now in front of his jury only. Mr. Brunon said he'll be here at 10.
Okay, and this is not in front of the jury, so we are going to jump forward a bit. Okay, we've got some oral argument here.
So I disposed to the defense.
Going back and forth, and
Menendez, the people may call their next witness.
okay, here we go.
People call
Boom.
Detective
Sorry about that. I
Zoeller.
should have had that queued up.
I do. Leslie H. Zoeller, Zoeller.
So it's a mustache Monday today.
Your Honor, I have an audio tape. May I have this marked as Exhibit 128. It purports to be an interview with Erik Menendez.
129.
So I withdrew 128 yesterday.
Well, it was marked, as I recall.
It was. I was about to mark it as for selection.
All right, then we'll make this 128.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I have a transcript of this tape. May I have that marked as Exhibit 129?
129.
There has been a transcript that's been prepared, Your Honor, and since has copies of it. May I pass them out to the jurors?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Okay. So we've got an interview that's going to be played for the jury. We'll see how well we can hear it because of technology.
Detective Zoller, drawing your attention to September 17th, 1989. Were you in Cranberry, New Jersey on the Menendez murder investigation?
Yes, I was.
And in the afternoon, did you interview Erik Menendez?
Yes.
Do counsel stipulate that the court reporter does not have to transcribe the tape?
Yes.
All right, let's go back, just again, the date that this interview took place.
This is September 17th.
Let's have it from the witness.
September 17th of 1989.
Yeah, where?
It's in Cranberry, New Jersey,
Where?
at the residence of Terry and Carlos Brunon.
And can we have a foundation, Mr. Creon, as to who was present during this conversation?
Yes, Your Honor. During this interview, who was present in the actual room in which you were conducting this interview?
It's my partner, Detective Thomas Lenahan, Erik Menendez, and myself.
Was it in a residence?
It was in a residence, that's correct.
Were there other people at the residence?
Yes.
Can you hear other people conversing in the background?
At some portions, yes.
And who would those people be?
It was Carlos and Terry Baralt, and at different times, different people. I don't know exactly who was in the house.
In this conversation, was Erik Menendez in custody?
He was not.
May I play the tape, Your Honor?
How long is this tape recording? Approximately.
The interview was approximately an hour.
Okay. All right, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Zoller, is this an edited version of that tape?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection sustained. We can discuss that later on, Mr. Creon.
Very well.
Oh boy. I do not have high hopes for the quality of this audio.
Cranberry, New Jersey, speaking to Erik Menendez. It's now 4:20
Oh,
a.m. on September 17th, 1989,
Actually, PM.
or p.m. rather. And Detective Zoller is also present, and we're going to be conducting an interview now with Erik.
What we're doing with this investigation, we're finding out everything that we can about your mother and your father. And obviously that involves you and Lyle. So we talked to a lot of your friends. We talked to Fred Signorelli, I'm sure you know him, and some other of your Sal Bass's friends. We talked to Lyle's friends.
Robin, if you can tell me exactly. Not that I'm retired, I just want to know.
Dr. Robin.
Dr. Robin. And talk to Becky.
And about that, yeah.
That would be close to me.
A lot of people that we want to talk to that we haven't yet, which we probably will, have left for school. So as far as we talked to a couple of your tennis coaches,
Hobie.
talked to Hobie, we talked to
Fred Heinrich.
yes,
And
the guy that
Gmail. Who? Gmail.
no,
Gmail.
who was the tennis coach at the
Oh,
The Hobie.
Dr. Woodcock. Deputy Arnaz. No, Second McBride.
no, the guy
Duck.
Doug
Dogs.
yeah, that's the guy.
Okay, yeah. My other two coaches were Dr. Whitline, and Gene Hill. Yeah, just Gene. Right.
But, you know, that's why we're doing that. So if people come and say, hey, the police officer talking about you, well, we're talking to them about you because they don't know your dad. You know, they get some insight from you. You know, and we get a little pieces from everybody we talk to. You know, we're not expecting to get a whole ton of information from Doug Dots.
Did you talk to Casey Weber?
No. That's all I have is his phone number. I just
Yeah, but I don't know his consultants.
Yeah, everybody we've spoken to says, oh, we don't know anything, but every time we speak to somebody, there's just a little bit something that we didn't know we could come.
And that's all we're after.
That's all we're after.
So if you hear somebody say something, you know, we're hoping, we're going to be very honest with you. And we're hoping that you're going to be very honest with us. And that we have a good enough
Okay. Let's continue with this now, shall we? Okay. Sharing my screen. And sorry guys, it's my internet again. Ugh. It's another internet Monday. Okay. Hopefully you guys haven't missed too much from the audio of what we were listening to. I tried to pause it as soon as I saw that there were some issues. So hopefully everything's okay. Okay, let's continue.
With you because we're not on the opposite side of you. You know, we're dealing basically not for you. You know, we're on your side. Yeah, we're not trying to nail you or anybody. You know, that's not our purpose. Although we're the police, and a lot of times, you know, people that aren't police think that the police are, you know, the jerks or whatever. So that we don't want here. You know, generally we are, but this time we're not going to be with you. We may be with somebody else. So, you know, we want to be honest with you, and we want you to be honest with us. So, and that's where we're coming from. And as I said, if you hear that we interview somebody or talk to somebody, you go, well, what in the world are they talking to them about?
You can talk to whoever you want.
Yeah,
Some people, like Craig and my dad didn't have good before.
yes.
Well, we take every conversation we have to grain of salt, because we realize that people aren't with certain people because of reasons.
Yeah, generally we hear the same thing a couple of times, which reinforces it.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a problem with some guy, he says one thing about you.
Very true, Tony B. Very true.
So let's, you know, we'll take the good out of that conversation. So that's, you know, don't worry about that. We go, when we investigate a case and when we file a case and when we prosecute a case, we can't go with innuendos. We have to go with the facts, basically. So that's what we are. You know, a lot of things that we're going to talk to you about are questions that came up at the crime scene, things that you did, that Lyle did. We know it's going to be hard. We're going to ask questions that are really going to be hard for you, as far as the, you know, remaining back to that night. And we apologize ahead of time. We don't do it purposely to drag you through the coals to have you go through this again, so that's not our purpose at all. And as I said, we apologize ahead of time. It has to be done. Y'all went out at Dable. What time did you come back that night?
Wait. It was a night.
1 second, guys. Let me try one thing really quickly, okay? Sorry. I think this might help the whole tech situation here. 1 sec. Okay, can everybody see and hear me? Hopefully. Let's see here. How's this going? I know for me, my internet is for some reason crawling right now. Like I feel like I look very blurry. Okay, you can see and hear me though. That's good. Okay, so it could just be that it's showing up blurry on mine when I'm like looking at the page on YouTube. So, okay. All right. Okay, let's continue then.
Shark fishing. Shark fishing? Yeah. Really boring. Shark go fishing before? We left it. No, yeah, not shark fishing. We left it like 4 or 5 hours. So it was a segment. We talked about it. Yeah.
Had your dad like fishing?
Well, it's his idea.
Yeah, we heard why it was his idea, which we'll share with you in a second.
He was, I guess it was kind of boring. He caught one shark and it was pretty sad.
Who got it?
Well, we have different fishing lines now, and you just set them up and you wait. You basically don't reel it in, and like the fishing line, you just wait. The sharks come to you. He's kind of anxious to get out of there. It's 40, so.
We heard that your dad wanted to go fishing to learn because of the client that he had. That he wanted to learn so he could get on the good side of the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, this was something that was thought about months before. Maybe the time was coming close and gonna have to do it.
Yeah. So I wanted to learn that. Exactly. They went deep sea fishing once before.
Oh, that's the one that's up on the wall?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom caught that.
Oh my gosh.
It was a big fish.
I thought we had fought or something.
No, they caught that. They all the pictures of them. All
And,
a pair of jeans. Let's see if we can say that. The hole here comes out back here, and the hole here comes out back here. Almost like a bullet hole or something.
where's this at?
Change your hair.
Where were they there?
I don't know. I'm wondering possibly they've been in the room. Or,
Where did you get them from?
they're my jeans, and I don't remember. I guess they were.
Before we go get them,
They're upstairs. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't remember where they came from. It didn't occur to me. I mean, I was wearing them, and I was just once when I was wearing them, I realized that I had a hole on top.
Yeah.
And then one time I was just massaging the bottom of my thigh, and I realized there was a hole in the bottom. And I checked in the exact same hole. Could have been the jeans were folded and all went through, or I don't know.
Yeah, let's look at it before we go.
Recording technology has definitely gotten a lot better since then.
You parents
It's
normally get up same time.
clearer than previous interviews that we've listened to.
10 o'clock and 7, 8 o'clock.
Well,
But
my mom usually gets up early.
Still not great.
My dad usually went over there. We basically played tennis all summer. So it wasn't a set schedule. In the summer, usually it's different because in the law or traveling with tennis. And my dad usually is a late riser in the morning. Although I'm even later.
Yeah.
So I like to get my sleep. So yeah, usually my mom's up though. Usually my mom's up early. My dad's up late.
You still get up in the morning? Anybody that
Oh yeah, no. He gets up probably like by 10 or 11. He doesn't sleep till.
Wait a second. Okay, your everyday sheep. So Eric said this. There's bullet holes in my jeans. Okay, I missed this. I know I see folks in the chat having a hard time with following the conversation, and so am I, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I missed this. So thank you, your everyday sheep, for saying this. Canberra says he just said his jeans have holes in them similar to bullet holes, which definitely sound. I mean, yeah, that's terribly incriminating. I don't know. Why would someone say that? Why would anyone say that? That's yeah. And Ellen, not Sarah Lee. I'm sorry. Closed captioning is not an option on this one, unfortunately. If this were YouTube, maybe that would be an option, but on Court TV's website, it is unfortunately not. So we just have to try to really bend our ears here, and keep listening. But thank you to you guys in the chat that are sort of helping to keep these pieces apparent for everybody else. So Brad says he incriminates himself so many times on this tape. So okay, all right, well, let's keep listening. Thank you guys for pointing out the bullet holes in his jeans, or his jeans that look like bullet holes. That's terrible. That's yeah, very, very, very self-incriminating right there.
They have a habit of falling asleep in front of the television downstairs.
No. Well, my mom would. My dad would be up. Actually, they would. Well, they'd fall asleep, but only for like maybe an hour. Usually my dad would be up watching a movie, and my mom would fall asleep in his lap. Or my mom would be up watching a movie, and my dad would fall asleep in the chair. But then, as soon as the movie was over, I mean, they wouldn't like fall asleep and wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
They may fall asleep until the end of the movie, in which case they'd get up. I guess one of them would get up, but not really. Like I would wake up 6 in the morning.
Yeah. Now, would they normally sit on their couch?
Where we found them, at least where we found my dad.
That would be consistent with their.
Yeah. That's where he was when we left the group. That's where he was watching TV today. And my mom was usually right next to him. She was right next to him.
Let's just run through this real quick and we're done with it. You both entered the house that night through the front door.
Yeah.
And you went directly into the family room?
Well, yeah, I usually do. I was actually in the kitchen. I believe my brother ran upstairs when they came down with me. There was a lot of smoke in the room. There was basically just, I don't know, I guess it wasn't a shock. There was basically just a lot of blood everywhere.
So you went in, did you go through?
When I walked in the door, the front door,
Yeah, right.
and I just walked straight.
Walk straight into the den and you would go to the kitchen.
Yeah. And I guess maybe one of the reasons that I walked straight in there is because the TV was on. And sometimes they're up late, but usually when they're up late, they're going to watch TV. A lot of times they go and answer in the bedroom. But they locked in the door in the bedroom. Kept it closed. And so it was late when we came home, and so part of it was see if they were upstairs asleep or if they were still in there. The TV wasn't loud. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I take it when the police went in there.
I hadn't touched the TV.
Okay. So
and from what I remember, I thought about it 3 million times over my mind. It wasn't loud. Did you notice the TV?
Yeah. Seemed loud to me.
Okay, maybe it just didn't seem loud to me.
Maybe in comparison to the shotguns, it didn't seem that loud.
So,
what you're used to. Did the smoke that you smelled when you came in, what did it smell like to you? Like your dad's pipe smoke?
no, I've been getting I have this thing where I smell the smoke every day. When I smell the burning of the car engine, there's been overheated. Reminds me of the smoke. Every day I remember the smoke, and probably for a long time it was. And it was just, I remember it was like my mom burned something in the kitchen. It was just a slow haze. The room was like dark yellow. And it was just like a slow, just like haze. It was sitting there. I remember when it smelled like, it immediately smelled to me like gun smoke. Obviously, when I saw it.
You know what kind of smoke it smells like?
Well, I never really smelled it before. I don't know how to do it. I never really close friend like that. I imagine that's what it's supposed to be. No, what do you think? I just assumed that.
You would presume that you guys know what it smells like.
Yeah,
It was something other than, it was a foreign smell.
So, real quick. So Menendez trial says he said, I have this thing where I smell smoke every day. I definitely didn't catch that. But thank you for pointing that out. And Care Bear says the attorneys will highlight certain notable statements from this taped interview. So don't worry if most of y'all like me can't understand most of it due to the quality. I definitely appreciate that. Thank you for sort of easing my anxiety on this, because I'm like, I am not getting this. Which, to be honest, I mean, part of it could be because this is, we're twice removed from the conversation that is being listened to, right? Because we're talking about the conversation specifically between Detective Zoller and Lyle Menendez, or Erik Menendez, and that is first recorded on this audio tape, which is being played on this boombox, and then being further recorded by Court TV, and then being played through YouTube. So we've got like multiple levels of technology that we're dealing with here. So there's that aspect that we're dealing with that the jury may not have dealt with, but still the underlying quality of the first level, the tape, may have been something for the jury to be struggling with as well. So it's interesting to see how like technology can make things easier for the jury to understand over time, when we have the ability to, have witnesses testify by Zoom, and we have recordings with 4K video and, whatever kind of great audio. It's, things like that can really make a difference over time. But regardless, back to Care Bear. Thank you so much for pointing that out. That'll be good to hear when the attorneys point out some statements here. Okay, let's continue.
It fit. I walked in the room, I saw them shot. I just assumed that it was that smoke. Yeah.
How far into the room did you get? How close to your parents did you get?
I saw them as soon as I walked in the room, before the coffee table. And I was there, it seemed like a long while before Lyle got there.
Seemed like a long while before I got there.
Chance to look over.
You walk almost right up to the coffee table.
Oh yeah, I walked behind the sofa.
I walked behind the sofa.
I looked at him. I was like, I wasn't like I didn't throw up. And
I didn't throw up.
And I was just, I guess, in such shock that I wasn't crying at first. I was calling for my brother, but I wasn't crying. He didn't fall on the ground sobbing. It was his own. I I guess, too much in a shock. I didn't even think that someone else could be still in my house or anything. But it didn't occur in my mind. I just couldn't believe that they were like, actually, they didn't look real. They basically looked, I mean, I've never seen it really. When my grandmother died in front of me, basically, like, in an airplane, two seats facing each other, she had a heart attack in front of me. And, how old were you? That was, 3 years ago, I think. So I guess 17. And that was pretty hard, especially when I took off the time and so but there was no blood involved, and they didn't look real. Like I remember one thing distinctly, like my dad was shot through the left thigh. And so I was wondering what kind of gun, because, but then, you know, I talked to security guards about it, so I've been dealing with security guards for this one, and, it's just, it wasn't, that's just no sustainable.
And then Lyle came in, and he took you out of the room. And you both went upstairs?
Lyle went upstairs in my parents' room, and I called my coach in my room. I guess he was the closest person I've been to, as my brother. He basically, you know, my best friend because he's with us every day. And he was incredible. I think you talked to me. Yeah, Mark. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think everyone here is reading the transcript of the audio. So that means the jury may have a copy of it as well. Sorry, guys. We don't have the transcript.
I don't know. Yeah, let me know outside. Please for that. I have a question on you wanted to ask. We did talk in the first 2 weeks because we didn't know to discuss this. If I would have gone and gotten the gun when parents had been going, and I walked outside of the house with the gun, which maybe would have been a different state of mind or something. I mean, done because what is it? We would have just outside the house or something like that. What would the police done?
Oh, did it drop the gun?
They wouldn't have just shot me.
No. Not after receiving the call from mine. Then the police telling me to come out. And I'm sure you wouldn't come up pointing at me.
No, well, they didn't tell us to come up. We walked outside the house. Maybe 911 told us.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, that's right. So I was just curious.
Unfortunately, not necessarily that type of crime, but when our residents in that city hear noises or something, they set off their alarm or they call the police in the patrol and property. Oftentimes, these people come out of the house. It's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon, but it would have been a little bit uncommon because of the night.
Yeah.
They knew kind of what they were going into when they got there.
Pretty very good. Yeah, I was just.
When you know that cordless phone that's usually kept in the bar?
It's missing.
Oh, we have. Yeah. Oh, where does the cord? I'll tell you that. Where does the hand part, the receiver part, cap? You know, in the house.
Yeah, the one where you talk to. Right, that's what's missing.
Yeah. You know where that's usually kept?
On your face? Or right around that area.
Okay. would it seem normal to keep it, with the L-shaped couches and the end closest to the bar? It had pillows all around it. It's under a pillow right in that corner.
Like where you're sitting, that pillow would be.
Yeah, under that pillow.
Under?
Yeah, you know why, that's why we took it, because we took it to fingerprints. I think that somebody might have used it. You made a call, I don't know. It's not uncommon. It's not out of the realm of possibility, I'll put it that way, it's not all that common.
I don't know why I didn't hear it, maybe the phone under there earlier, but I remember that
Did your moms have it, they have it, or your dad has it?
often they would
Have it close to them, so
so often they may have had it on the coffee table or on the table behind in the corner. They might have it there. Most of the time it's kept on the receiver. Maybe if they were watching TV, they could have gotten a phone call. And they were supposed to order. They said they were going to order Chinese food. So possibly that's maybe why they. Was it far away from them, or was it right next to them?
Well, with the L-shaped couch, it was on this end where your dad usually sits.
It was
all
right
the way,
next to them. Oh, it was all the way
on the other side, close to the bar.
Underneath the door?
I can't open the bar, and I can't
So that was the beginning. I don't know what they had to do that.
Okay, that's why we got it. It didn't make any sense, I think.
Well, which I don't know what kind, unless it maybe slipped. That was something.
I think we had to tell whether it was purposely kept under that truck.
Under the pillows, like the top of it.
We have that, so.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. And the gate was open, the alarm was off, the door was unlocked. It could have been someone that knew.
Well, all indications of us going into the room with the experience that he and I have is that it's somebody they knew, because it doesn't appear as either one of your parents. One struggled with them, seemed to be disturbed, struggled. Your dad was seated on the couch.
There was no swing. Which didn't make any sense to me.
As for the gate being open, Lyle's first interview, he said that he remembers taking out the little scooter earlier before you had gone to the show. And he didn't remember shutting the gate when he came back. And you got to open out the back.
I hope he was close. It would, likely the gate would have been closed. We left to the back, just took my car to the back. But likely, usually, I mean, like we just got in an argument the week before, like on a Wednesday or so, about, my parents know that we're going to come back late. They close the gate, lock the door, may not turn on the alarm until we go to sleep, but they lock the door, they close the gate, and they turn the alarm.
They usually did not turn the alarm on until they went to sleep.
I don't know. I don't know really, because I didn't come home.
But when you were home.
No, because they wouldn't turn the alarm on when I was home, so I would just stay for something because.
So before they retired.
Basically, before they retired. Well, I was really nervous lately. And they actually bought a gun. And
Also, that just got had the other two guns.
yeah, exactly. And which that didn't make any sense. And when I questioned her about it, she was like, she was saying that she avoided the subject. And she did write a note on what she found before.
What was the note about?
That it indicated that she was might be expecting the best. That's what it indicated.
Where is that?
I love you so much. I'm like my brother. He showed my Uncle Brian. handling most of the stuff. We were here when I was diagnosed. And basically saying, you know, we love you a lot, and there's a letter somewhere. And then basically saying, you know, there's a letter somewhere if I die. I mean, it all can do the case. That's because when we first moved into the house, we never used to close the door, gate at night. We never locked the front door. I mean, I didn't even know what the alarm code was, and you know, it's never any problem. And then all of a sudden, I remember for a week, very adamant about closing the door. It didn't click in my mind first, and that's why we got in a lot of arguments to do on that. There's no reason to close it. There's no reason to let the detective. And
That night when you left, what time did you leave the house?
didn't know there was a difference. Rudy, the little dog, was upstairs in my mom's bedroom, and the black dog you said was outside. Right? So the dogs were always kept together.
Okay, let me tell you about the dogs. When the police officers arrived, the little dog was upstairs. The black dog they didn't see at all. Now, of course, when the police officers opened the doors, they opened the door from the living room to that your yard, rear yard court over, and they opened that door. So whether the black dog was up there hiding from the police officers because the black dog didn't know them from Adam, and the police officers didn't see him, could have been, and with the door open, it could have run outside. Because I had later seen the dog in the guest house.
I've been in a guest house earlier,
And I didn't see it. And then when you guys came, and I took Lyle in there, it wasn't in there. And then later I saw it was in the maid's quarters there. So, I don't know.
Now asking about the dog.
The question, what time did you leave the house for the show?
We always have played somewhere. Around the 7:50, 6:58, I'm sure we wanted to see them.
What did you want to say?
We wanted to see license to go see that or something.
What did you end up seeing?
Batman, yeah. Well, after the movie,
How long was the movie? What time did you get the movie?
somewhere, I guess, the late night. Sure.
Oh, sweet relief. Just because of the sound quality of that tape. We're going to get to some questions now. Oh, nope. More tape. Okay.
We were supposed to go to a wine tasting in Santa Monica, but I didn't know it was in Santa Monica first. And so we went the wrong way. I thought 34th was around town.
34.
And so we got to the wine plant late. And Perry was in there. So,
Do you remember what your brother wanted to talk to Perry about? Perry doesn't remember. Or Perry didn't know when your brother doesn't remember.
Oh, that's right. Night eyes. This is the days when like you would run out of space relatively quickly because of like technological constraints. They have a thumb drive that'll like have hours and hours of 4K video.
So he just told me that he was meeting Perry. And the chief detective.
So you came home
We came home.
after not seeing Perry at the Taste of LA Wine.
Yeah.
And you went to get some ID.
Yeah.
What name was the ID in?
Kit Kat. Yes, I am old enough to remember
What
that.
name? What are your names?
And your name, or just the birthday was offered, so you could swap?
No. It was one of my friends. It's an ID that just looks like me.
What's the friend's name?
It's what was the name of the ID? I haven't seen it yet. I would have brought it here. My cousin. Timmy.
What is it, a Chicago ID?
Got a picture on it? Yeah. I used to. That's good. I probably would do that.
Are you having to drive?
Well, Lyle wants to drive.
Yeah, it sounds like he's doing.
Is it really?
That's what he said just a while ago. Be prepared.
Well, if he wants to drive, maybe I'll just fly and meet him. Because we got to get some. I don't really want to stay at the house. I don't know how long. I'm not going to want to stay at the house. And when he walks, that's a good idea. Once the security leaves, for sure.
Is that who's there now, some security as far as the car that we see going by?
Zoller.
Is it plain clothes now or something? We didn't see him outside. There's a gray, silver gray Chrysler New Yorker. It's been there, was in the driveway at the right time that car should. Well, without wearing the people we've seen that aren't wearing uniform.
Where did you see that?
We saw them on Thursday, and that'd be Wednesday, last Wednesday.
I've never seen the right before.
There's cars in the driveway that we've been raised. There's one Chrysler's been there a few times.
They park in the driveway a lot of times. But when I'm there, they always wear uniform. They always wear, they're supposed to wear uniform. To show that they're security guards. Yeah. There's people there calling like that. But I'm not going to want to stay at the house. I'm not going to want to walk the house and go upset with that.
Where are you going to stay?
Mark wants me to stay with him for a couple of days, and I'm going to either, I've got to check with the real estate agent about leasing or renting a volleyball place for the tennis court. It's Santa Monica, and then go away. And so I was planning on that, but I don't want to spend a week and a half driving back to the last thing I want to see all kinds of people. On the way back, I was stopping at the airport, I stopped in Chicago, and I stopped here. It's nice. It's fun driving back, and you get tickets, but so I'm going to that.
Your Ford then?
My Ford's at home. The Ford Escort's at home, and the Alfa Romeo's in the Alfa dealership.
How about your dad's Mercedes?
That's at the company.
That's the lease car.
That's at the company. We're doing that bunch of company. Get a lot of issues. So I don't know what this is. I guess, I don't want to, I'm not going to be able to explore this. I don't want to explore this. And we'll get over to explore this. So I guess we're going to go on tour. That's the both of you? Yeah. We're not the same people, so we'll go a little bit differently. I want to train for 6 months, and he wants to train for a month. And he wants to go on tour and start playing matches in Eagle. And I want to do it in 6 months because I don't know I'm ready. But yeah, when we go on tour, basically, we start really going on tour. We're going on tour and I'm pretty confident. We're both pretty good with a while that we can train. I definitely have more of an ambition to make it. I see my way, as you know, I'm sure our family is a long line of incredibly successful athletes and incredibly successful people, self-made millionaires, and athletes. My great-grandfather was the Hall of Fame in baseball, my grandfather in soccer, my grandmother in swimming, my dad in swimming, and this, making millions. So, I mean, we can't become a self-millionaire, but we can become the one world Texas. And that was 15-1. And I mean, my dad was very strong about that. There was success going down. And that's probably what raised us. And so, I guess it's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Princeton. It's because my dad really wanted me to go to Princeton. I probably wanted to go for 3 years. And so it felt really bad that when my dad was gone, that he was just going to go, yeah, I'm going to do what I want now. He said, you know, I'm going to do what my dad wants me to do. And that's a lot of what we're going to be looking after. Like he wanted to get Castro in Cuba. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking for the future. It's probably going to cause some problems, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it because of what happened in Colorado. So much political could be destroyed. But it's certainly going to be a goal. And something that's going to be there. I mean, I have my goals pretty well mapped out. I wanted to go into politics. My dad wanted this too. But, you know, I want to live up to things that my dad wanted to really live up to. And I guess, you know, they say, you know, live your own life. But my own life was part of his dream. And, you know, I don't know. I think I'll just, I mean, it's only been a month amazing myself. And I feel like it could have been a week ago.
Looks like it's something English that got.
And I'm still thinking about the project every day. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, that's not, really. But, all that positive.
I used to go to bed. Now, like a 4 o'clock in the morning, like I do now, or 3 or 12, whatever time I'm tired, so that I don't have to sit in bed and think about it. Until I'm waiting until I'm dead tired. And so it varies from 12 to 4, so I wake up late. But it's going to be stuff. Good mornings.
Well, maybe by doing that, by going on tennis out, it's going to give you something else to think about. Right now, you're not really doing,
Exactly.
doing anything.
Exactly.
So you probably need that. So
Yes.
think about this.
And I want to be, I like LA. New Jersey is a dreary place.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So,
What?
we trade the second with you. We did beautiful. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from
New Jersey is beautiful. Oh, you should take a trip. I mean, they say, you know, everyone thinks of New Jersey to think of pollution as well. We used to live in on Mountain Avenue, and 2 lakes, 78 acres, like just trees, a mile drive into our house, so rolling grass, and it was a beautiful place in Princeton. And that's why part of the reason we wanted to do is go down and get back to the East Coast. But, I don't want that right now. LA needs something to pump me up a little bit.
A little slower moving up here too. When you went to the movies, you do the ticket stubs. You don't do the steps.
I think we have a few steps. I think we had the ticket steps after movies. I don't know the ticket steps.
Like to see them, just let me know.
I don't know the ticket steps.
It's the same thing to maybe in the car. Your car.
It could be. Okay. I usually just really Lyle puts in his pants, I put in my pants, and unless they get washed out in the laundry,
Yeah, they're there forever.
they're in their grandma. When I clean my car, I haven't cleaned my car. I just found over the second. So it could be.
Did you have any reason for altering your parents at all?
Well, actually, we spent the whole summer together on tennis.
That's unusual. You don't do spend the summer together play tennis, or
No, I do.
not in.
I do. We do it every summer.
Yeah.
Except for last summer, which I fractured my ankle, so it's been exciting. But we we basically spent every second of the day with him. And so we were pretty close. Right up until the day back. But no, real good. Real good. My dad, in the last man, April, thought that I was opening up intense. And so,
Sounds like it's being a difficult project.
yeah, exactly. And we wanted to go to college real bad and get away from them. Just try to stay away and do my own thing.
Were you going to stay on campus at UCLA?
Yeah, I was hoping to go. You talked to Jerry O'Zeal. Who? Jerry O'Zeal. Yeah. He's a psychiatrist.
Give me the name again.
Jerry O'Zeal.
No, I haven't heard that name.
I haven't heard the name.
No.
Probably checked that on purpose just to put them on the slip to the papers.
Nothing close to famous.
Okay.
Who? O'Zeal?
O-Z-I-E-L. Definitely my psychiatrist. My parents basically made us get one after child access.
Parents made him go to Dr. O'Zeal. I do feel bad for these guys because I feel like growing up, they just were surrounded by terrible people. Between their father, Dr. O'Zeal, their mom may be less terrible, but definitely an enabler, it sounds like.
Because now he was one that you talked to.
Yeah, he was my parents. He had meetings with my mom and dad together.
Have you seen him after the death?
Yeah, he came over and talked to me. Probably. I guess it could be a good idea.
Yeah.
Gwendolyn SS, I agree.
Does he talk for anybody?
They are not helping anything by interviewing in a noisy place like this. I think this was at like their family's home in New Jersey, like aunts and uncles or someone's home. Yeah, something like that.
He probably will not give us any information because we haven't involved.
Kerber, agreed. Agreed.
Confidentiality. So what I may do is have you call him and tell him it's okay to talk to us, which is all that takes, because you're the one that holds confidentiality.
He may not be able to tell you from our parents.
No, he should still be able to do.
Even though
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, because there's a confidentiality that the patient holds, that he can't give up that confidentiality.
So my parents were not patients sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, but
Your parents aren't here to,
aren't here to hold.
aren't here to hold the confidentiality.
So you'll be able to give up that confidentiality. So we'd like to talk to you.
Whew. Oh. Like, is it over, or we're gonna get to some actual questions soon?
Lyle and remember.
I think it's been cute in the house. We really together. We just like he's like on.
What I'm getting at is whether anybody else got it, had it, maybe some more people that had it keep the house that could have.
I don't think so. I don't think I would. I don't know if they would. I don't know
There's nothing going on at the house work-wise that would necessitate giving a key out.
No, I don't think so. Possibly come in and that.
Did you get a normal allowance or did you?
Yeah, but that pretty much ended the reception. We have $180 a month.
Do you have a credit card or?
I just got mine. That
ended over the summer.
Well, when I went to play tennis and so on, I really didn't do that much. There was no, so I didn't get it home. Yeah, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I was UCLA. So I was looking forward to it.
For the memorial service, you and Lyle went out to get watches.
There was Lyle
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have a matter that currently has just arisen that requires a little more discussion.
Ooh.
As you might have noted in the past, those things do happen. So we'll take a recess and give you a chance to stretch your legs or get coffee, whatever you like. And if you would return at a quarter to the hour, quarter to 11. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. And we'll have you back here at a quarter to.
Wow.
And council will remain and we'll continue our discussion.
So there must be something that comes up in the,
All
in
right,
the audio.
let's continue this
We'll listen for a little bit and then
discussion.
we'll fast forward.
There apparently was a transcript delivered to the defense, which had been edited based upon discussions between the parties. And the defense on August the 1st received the transcript and assumed that the transcript that had been delivered reflected the final agreement between the parties. And the defense did not review the transcript. And at this point, having listened to the tape in court for the first time, realizes that the transcript and the tape recording, which is the basis of the transcript, is different than what the defense understood to be the agreement between the parties. And at this point, number one, the court wants to determine whether or not it's the people's understanding as well that the portions that the defense is now complaining about were to be in the final version based upon your negotiations.
There were many negotiations and many objections made by the defense. We had discussions about this. When I came to the finalized transcript, I brought it to counsel's office on the 1st of August. I indicated to Ms. Morrissey, and in fact, Ms. Abramson came minutes after I arrived,
I'm
that
going to object to that statement. It had nothing to do with that conference. When Mr. Kurian mentioned.
you were in the.
All right, it doesn't really matter much. Go ahead.
And I told Ms. Morrissey that this was the transcript that I intended to present to the jury. I gave her the transcript and she commenced to read it. And I hadn't heard anything, any objections at all until right now. And this is
a case of he said, she said.
August 12th.
Okay, there's
This
the
is
defense
important.
isn't disputing that.
Because there can be a major
my question
difference
to you
in what the
is
transcript says.
whether or
That's
not
huge.
you have any recollection or understanding that the portions that the defense is complaining about now that have been deleted from the transcript and the tape recording were really portions that should have been left in the transcript and tape recording.
In my opinion, and when I gave her the transcript, I believe that they should not have come in. And I indicated that this was a transcript that I was agreeing to. And when I gave it to counsel on the 1st, I told her that this is a transcript that I had, they had asked that the last
We're gonna put a
nearly
poll
10
in here.
pages be redacted. And they wanted certain areas in that I did not agree to. And I told Ms. Morrissey that this is what I'm agreeing to. I excised most of what they wanted and I gave her the copy of it. And
You excised most of what they wanted to have excised, or
correct.
right? And did you also excise portions that the defense wanted to have in?
I did.
And did you notify the defense of that?
I did.
Did you do that orally or in
I
writing?
did that when
or-
I handed the transcript. I said, this is what I'm agreeing to. Gave it to Ms. Morrissey and she commenced to read it while I was there. And then I left and
All
I
right,
never
there's a
heard
poll.
anything else.
And just
Do you think that this is a
one
dirty
additional
trick?
thing, when you handed the
Or
transcript
an
to
honest
her, it was
disagreement?
just the final version. It wasn't a version that was unredacted or unedited
No,
with
this was-
notations as to what it was that you were removing so that somebody could look at the document and ascertain what was being removed.
This is the final version.
Okay, all right, Ms. Morrison.
Your Honor, Mr. Kuriyama, after extensive discussions and an agreement between us as to what was going to go in and what was going to go out, because there was give and take on both sides, came to my office, presented me with a transcript, which I believed reflected the discussions that he had had. He did not tell me I have made changes. He did not indicate to me that this was anything other than the
Right.
version that we had agreed upon. And I accepted that, and I believed it was the version that we had agreed upon. I had no reason, and nothing that he said would have led me to believe that he had made changes in addition to the changes that we had discussed and that we both knew about.
Well, the dispute apparently is whether or not the portions that Mr. Kuriyama removed were portions that both sides agreed should be removed. That's the bottom line.
No, and I can give the court what was removed. Essentially, after there is a discussion, which is at now page 33.
I don't have the transcript here.
Why don't you mark a copy of the original transcript for the judge and compare it to this version so he can see?
Here it is. I have a copy of the objections that I submitted to the district attorney's office. The sections that are cut out are indicated in purple. And I'll just mark the purple on the side.
And those are the parts that you thought were to be in?
Yes, that were not in.
Whoa, that's pages.
That's all right. Well, let me ask Mr. Kuriyama, did you have a document that you used to edit and make the final version?
I did.
And does it have on your document some memorandum or effort to remove those or document that you can remove those portions in some way?
It has my highlighting of those portions I did not intend to present.
Okay, and the portion that the defense is complaining about are pages 33 through 35 of the unedited version.
That's correct.
All right, and all right, I will review it, and you can let me go back and say that none of these modifications, wherever they appear on the transcript or in the tape, have been done in consultation with the court. These were things done by counsel. And this is first the court has been made aware that there is any problem, or has been any problem. The court certainly encouraged counsel to meet and confer to resolve any disputes regarding the tape so that it could be played without such issues that we're now presented with ever arising. All right, I read the portion which begins in the unedited version of the transcript at line 22 of page 33 and goes down to line 10 of page 35.
What your everyday sheep, the reason why they might want to edit out and it would be a non-issue is if there are parts of the interview that are not really relevant.
Your understanding was that this was agreed upon by both sides
neither
to be
side
removed?
sees it as like,
If I may approach, Your Honor.
important.
I do have my working copy of the transcript.
They also don't want to waste the time of the jury.
Morrissey's
So that
writing.
would be an example of why they would want to edit out some portions of an interview. But, it makes, I definitely understand, the idea that if there's an interview that is being admitted and put in front of the jury, it's much less suspect if you get the whole thing, right? So, okay, we are going to fast forward a little bit here. Maybe to the end here. Maybe we'll see his ruling at the end. Towards the end. If it
And later on, the defense can prepare or present a transcript that's similar to
I'll go back a little bit.
one at a later time, or
If the jury doesn't have a transcript, it's very hard for Ms. Morrissey, in the cross-examination, to take the officer too, every word.
No,
was said.
no. If
We need to get a transcript.
it can be played for the jury, and if you don't have a transcript, then you can obtain one at a later time or play it at a later time.
Your Honor,
I think Mrs. Bazanich is volunteering to have one prepared during this recess. She has it.
Your Honor,
I don't know if that's what she's volunteering or not. Yes.
okay. The transcripts are on a disc, and unless this copy, this redacted copy, replaced it on the old disc, we should be able to pull up that one page.
Sure.
Assuming that by redacting it, it didn't disappear.
All right. Well, that's
So
you
I
can do that fine. Otherwise, you can just play the tape, and later on, the defense can prepare or present a transcript. This similar situation arose at the beginning of the prosecution's case when they played the audio tape of the 911 call, and there was some controversy over the transcript, and therefore there was no transcript given to the jury. And it's just as a point of reminder, I'm still not aware that there has been a transcript marked as an exhibit regarding that tape. So if there is no transcript, the tape can be played, and later on, a transcript can be marked and received as an exhibit in relationship to this tape. All right, we'll be in recess until counsel.
Well, and then it's going to come back.
Trial, the defendant, Erik Menendez, is
Defendant.
his attorneys, people are represented, the jury is not present.
Jury is
Have
not present.
counsel been able to
Okay.
deal with the subject that was being discussed?
Yes, the transcript has been prepared and the tape is queued. We're ready to proceed.
All right, and is this something that people want to do on their direct or?
Yes.
Okay. Is there going to be any cross-examination of the witness after people complete their direct examination?
Yes, Your Honor, not extended cross-examination,
Just time estimate, how long do you think it would be?
10 minutes.
All right, and then after that, what is the proposal regarding the next evidence?
Mr. Brunon, and I believe there's going to be some.
Okay. So
Well,
we are
we're not
going
going-
to fast forward through this.
How long is it anticipated that?
Okay, we're still going through. Probably going to go all the way. Oh, here we go. Never mind. Let's go back a little bit.
Your Honor, may I pass the transcripts out to the jury?
The jurors have
Okay.
all returned, and
All right,
the witness is again on the witness stand. You may continue your examination, Mr. Trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. There is another audio tape. It's another portion of the September 17th, 1989 interview with Erik Menendez. May I have that marked as Exhibit 130
Yes, it's at 1:30.
with the two-page transcript of that portion? Exhibit 131, please.
Yeah.
Your Honor, may I pass the transcripts out to the jury?
Yes.
Detective Zoller, what we're about to play, is that another portion of the September 17th, 1989 interview that you had with Erik Menendez?
Got more,
It is.
more audio tape. More cowbell.
Lyle, involved in some charity work or something.
Yeah, that was down in Venice Beach. I worked with them. They're great. They showed me how to work with the watch officer. What agency? St. Joseph's. Sure. Just something going to pursue. Priests or fathers or whatever.
I really can't hear what anyone is saying.
I had a plan of what I wanted to do. But when I hear it's going to be too expensive, it deals with home. And it's something that I want to set up. But yeah.
And how did that develop the insurance? Is it because of the Calabasas thing?
It was because of the Calabasas thing, and but you know, lawyers, but that was the reason. But
this is what we do, and, you know, although it seems like we may be on the other side, we do help them.
No, I know
quite a few times.
Yeah, but the people that are
So
really,
true.
I never thought it's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know how it goes to your heart to see people like that, man. And, so, any people that I see, I was frightened of that. I mean, I don't know, when I was young, I used to love everything. I couldn't like a branch off a tree, a leaf off a tree. So I used to love everything. I would hurt it. And same said this when you told her, they have to experience things. I was hoping. Helping people like that.
Detective Zoeller, did you recognize Erik Menendez's voice on both of those tapes?
Yes.
Now we're on to questions.
Now, on the first tape, Exhibit 128, there was some discussion about Dr. Oziel, correct?
That's correct.
Did you
I
ever
did
get
catch that.
authorization to speak to Dr. Oziel?
No.
And the first time that you had met Dr. Oziel, would it be fair to say was when you did the search warrant on his home on March 8, 1990?
Yes, it is.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Whoa.
Cross-examination.
Thank you.
He really only asked like 3 questions. That's interesting. I mean, this is recalling this
Detective
witness. So,
Zoller. This interview on September 17th was at the home of Carlos and Teresita Baralt, correct?
That's correct.
And Teresita is the sister of Jose Menendez,
Yes, that's correct.
and Carlos is Erik's uncle.
Teresita's husband, that's correct.
Okay. And you went to the home on the 17th, actually to interview the Baralts, right?
That's correct.
Had you made arrangements to interview the Baralts prior to your arriving at their house on the 17th?
Yes, I had.
So this was something that had been arranged the day before?
I'm not sure whether it was the day before or not, but it was prior to that day.
And had you made the arrangements with Mr. and Mrs. Baralt?
Yes,
So they knew you were coming to their home on the 17th of September?
that's correct.
And did you also know at the time you went to the home on the 17th that Erik had been spending a lot of time with the Baralts?
I wouldn't characterize it as a lot of time. I know he had spent time there
Okay. He had been staying with them
periodically.
occasionally.
That's correct.
And in fact, when you arrived at the house, you found out that Erik was staying there at that time.
Correct.
Okay, and in fact, he was asleep upstairs when you arrived.
That's correct.
And you had his aunt go up and wake him up so that he could come down and talk to you. Is that correct?
Not exactly.
Okay, well, his aunt woke him up for you.
That's correct.
Okay. And then you had a conversation with him during the time you were at the house.
Yes.
Now, when you started talking to Erik, you began by telling him that you had spoken to a number of his friends.
That's correct.
And you named certain names of individuals that you had spoken to.
That's correct.
Okay, and he also suggested names for you to speak to.
Yes.
And you said that you had talked to various coaches, right?
Yes.
And he asked you who, correct?
That's correct.
And he also gave you names of coaches that you might talk to.
Yes.
Erik also told you in the beginning of the interview, he said something to the effect of Craig and his dad did not have a good rapport. Do you recall that portion of the tape?
Yes, I do.
And was it your understanding at that time that Erik had a friend by the name of Craig Signorelli?
Yes,
Okay, you knew
I
of
remember
his
Craig
existence.
Signorelli.
I did.
And had you already in fact spoken to Craig at that time?
Yes, I had.
Okay. were you aware at the time of this interview that Mr. Menendez had threatened
Objection,
to kill?
Your Honor. May we approach?
Yes, you may.
Did you ask any follow-up questions, Detective Zoller, about why Erik told you that Craig and his dad didn't have a good rapport?
No.
Now, Erik also talked to you during the interview about smoke in the room. Do you recall that portion of the tape?
Yes, I do.
And you were aware prior to arriving in New Jersey that Erik had reported that there was smoke, a heavy haze of smoke in the room, correct?
Yes, I was aware of that.
That was something that you had, some information that you had gotten from Detective Edmonds?
Yes,
And Detective Zoller, isn't it correct that it was this mention of smoke by Erik that was one of the things that made you very suspicious of him?
one of the things, yes.
Okay. And you indicated in the beginning of the interview to Erik that you were not there to nail him. Do you recall that?
Yes,
Okay. But in fact, you were suspicious of him at the time you had this interview in New Jersey. Right?
somewhat, yes.
And one of the things that made you suspicious was the reports of smoke that were repeated during the interview in New Jersey.
Yes.
At one point during your conversation with Erik, he mentioned a letter or a note or something that his mother had written. Do you recall that part of the tape?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And this was a note that Erik described as something about her dying.
Yes.
And is this, he also said, he also told you that this note, he believed was in the possession of either his brother or his uncle Brian.
That's correct. That's what he stated.
Now, do you know a person named Brian Anderson?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and do you understand that Brian Anderson is a relative of Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, her brother.
Okay, and this note that Erik spoke about, did you understand that to be a suicide note that Mrs. Menendez had left in the house and that her sons had found?
At the point that he made that statement, is that
Yes.
what you're asking?
Yes.
No, I did not take it that way.
Okay. Did you make any attempt to obtain the note that was referred to, that Erik referred to on September 17th, to find out what was in it?
I asked Erik about the note, and he stated that he would obtain the note to show us, which he never did.
Okay, but that isn't on the tape, is it?
No, it is not.
So was it sometime after the tape that you asked Erik for this suicide note?
Yes.
Or the note about your mother's death? Did you ever contact Brian Anderson and ask him if he had the note?
I don't believe I did, no.
Detective Zoller, at one point during the interview, towards the end, Erik talks about going to college. Do you recall that portion
Yes.
of the tape? Okay. And he says, but we wanted to go to college really bad. We were getting away from him, you know. And then there's an unintelligible, was trying to stay away and do other things. Do you recall Erik telling you that?
Yes.
Did you ask him any follow-up questions about who he was getting away from?
No.
Did you understand him to mean when he said we were getting away from him? Did you understand understand that to be a reference to his father.
I don't recall.
Okay, you weren't curious about who he had to get away from?
Seems like
I
a pretty
didn't key on it at that time, so I don't recall what my impression was of it.
And he also said
That seems
he
strange.
was
Why wouldn't you
trying
ask
to
a follow-up
stay
question?
away and do other things. Did you ask any follow-up questions about who he was staying away from?
No.
Now, Mr. Kuriyama also asked you about the therapist, Dr. Oziel. Now, the first time you ever heard Dr. Oziel's name was during this interview with Erik on September 17th.
That's correct.
Okay. And it was Erik who told you about him, correct?
Correct.
And Erik, in fact, spelled out his name for you.
He did.
And he told you he was in Beverly Hills.
Yes, he did.
Okay. And in fact, you suggested at that time that you thought it would be a good idea for Erik to continue to see Dr. Oziel.
Yes, I did.
And Erik agreed with that, correct?
Correct.
And you also discussed waiving confidentiality so that you could talk to Dr. Oziel.
That's correct.
And Erik, in fact, agreed to waive confidentiality so that you could talk to Dr. Oziel. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Any redirect?
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Zoller,
That was a good cross-examination.
did you understand Erik Menendez to be giving you authority to go to talk to this Dr. Oziel that he was seeing on September 17th? When you spoke to him?
No.
He told you that he was seeing a Dr. Oziel, a Beverly Hills psychiatrist, and he was seeing the psychiatrist because he said his parents made him, or made us, he and his brother, get a psychiatrist after the Calabasas thing. Is that right?
That's correct.
What did the Calabasas thing mean to you?
It meant the Calabasas burglaries that he and Lyle were involved in.
Now, after the discussion about Dr. Oziel, you discussed with him confidentiality, correct?
Yes, I did.
Did he ever tell you, I give you my authorization, go talk to him and he can tell you all about me?
He wanted us to go talk to him, and then it went into the confidentiality issue, to which it was left that he would contact the doctor giving up his confidentiality.
Okay, so he never gave up the confidentiality to you?
That's correct.
And this information that you gave to Erik Menendez occurred on September 17th, 1989, correct?
Yes, it was.
Is it your understanding that the confession was made by Erik Menendez on October 31st, 1989?
Objection, Your Honor. Yeah, Mr.
Objection sustained.
Yeah.
Counsel asked you about the suicide note, or this note left by Mrs. Menendez, and directing your attention to page 20 of the transcript of Exhibit 128.
Yes, I have it.
Erik Menendez indicated to you that his mother had written a note, correct?
That's correct.
That she expected to die,
That's what it stated, what he stated.
and she had written a letter to, I guess, he and his brother. Is that?
That's correct.
And she said that she loved them a lot.
Yes, that's what he stated.
And that Lyle or his uncle had the letter.
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Yeah.
Any recross?
Sorry, this is the first that I'm hearing about the suicide note as well.
Detective Zoller, regarding the confidentiality, the transcript indicates that you had a discussion, this is at page 32 at the bottom, that you had a discussion, a preliminary discussion, and you told Erik that Dr. Oziel couldn't talk to you unless he gave up confidentiality, right?
That's correct.
And you asked him, so you'd be able to give up that confidentiality? And he responds, oh. And then you say, because would like to talk to him. And Erik responds, okay, yeah. And that's what's on the transcript, correct?
That's correct.
There's nothing in there about anything further that Erik was supposed to do. Isn't that true?
I believe you're correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Yeah,
Anything else?
that's scored some good points there.
Detective Zoller, is it your experience that if you had gone to Dr. Oziel at that point with no authorization, no written authorization, no call from Erik Menendez telling Dr. Oziel, go ahead and tell the detectives everything that he knew up to that point, at least September 17th, 1989, did you think you could go to that doctor and get information about Erik Menendez at that point?
Objection, cause respect.
Are you asking what his state of mind
Yes, Your
was
Honor.
on that date?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, the objection is overruled.
Damn.
I would have expected Dr. Oziel to tell me that there was confidentiality. He could not talk about any of his patients.
Thank you.
Anything else?
At that point in time, had you spoken to a therapist or psychiatrist who had been treating Mrs. Menendez by the name of Dr. Cox?
I spoke to Dr. Cox. I don't know whether I had spoken to him before that time or after that time.
And in fact, what you did was you told Dr. Cox that there was no confidentiality because Mrs. Menendez was dead. Is that correct?
In reference to Mrs. Menendez, yes.
And you were able to obtain information from Dr. Cox.
Yes.
Okay, so well, I will leave it at that. No further questions.
All right,
Good.
anything further on that limited
She
subject?
almost
Yes,
went
Your
to the
Honor,
one
thank you.
question too many.
Detective Zoller, Erik Menendez was not dead, was he? There was still confidentiality.
All right,
It's relevant.
the objection is
Overruled.
that it's argumentative, is that it?
Yes, Your Honor, you read
Oh,
All right, the objection is sustained.
Oh.
You can rephrase the question if you
I
want.
thought it was.
Was Erik Menendez dead?
Again, the same ruling.
Did the same reasoning apply to you, or in your mind, that was applied to Mrs. Menendez with respect to Dr. Cox?
The circumstances were completely different.
Thank you.
All right, you may,
No further questions.
thank you, you may step down.
Thank you.
All right.
And let me see counsel at the side here. We'll discuss our little schedule situation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the next evidence. Okay, let's get the reporter over here, please. The next evidence will be this afternoon, so we'll excuse you at this point. Ask that you return at 1:30. It's possible we won't get started promptly at 1:30, but if you're here, at least we'll be able to if things work our way. So you're excused at this point. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. We'll see you here at 1:30.
Is there going to be
And
more?
let me see the bailiff for a second.
Or
All
we're
right,
going to
the-
fast forward to it.
Well, don't get carried away, Mr. Brunon.
Can you sit in the jury box, please? While we-
Well, you could sit where it's comfortable at this point. You don't have to get on the witness stand. The jurors have all gone and counsel have requested an opportunity to deal with certain matters that concern Mr. Brunon's proposed testimony. And the people have submitted to the court and defense a proposed list of questions that they intend to ask. And also, there was some mention of a tape recording of some sort that the defense had some request regarding. As far as that latter issue, did anyone want to speak to it at this point?
I'll speak to that, Your Honor. It was our understanding that Mr. Brunon was subpoenaed by the prosecution to appear to testify concerning conversations that he had with his client on or about October 31st, 1989. And we were informed this morning that Mr. Brunon brought with him a tape recorded statement that he received from Dr. Oziel.
All right, let's see if we can pass
And when I asked
forward.
Mr. Brunon out in the hall,
Let's see.
On my list of how was he or how did he behave?
Okay.
And I believe that
There's more argument here. Excuse me.
Where he indicated to Mr. Brunon how the privilege should
Okay,
be
more
asserted.
argument
and all the
here.
nego-
Let's see.
And at least preliminarily resolve that to the point of perhaps giving counsel
More
guidance.
argument here. We might end up skipping through the rest of this to the next witness. Oh. Looks like. Hang on. Let me go back a little bit here. Oh, because we have Detective Zoller back on.
station with Lyle
Is this in front of the jury?
Out from under the pressure and the financial burden.
Okay.
of
I'm gonna
being
play.
around.
All right. My suggestion is, as we discussed before, when the issue was first presented to me, that if possible, we can litigate the admissibility of this witness's testimony based upon the report that was presented to the court by Mr. Bird. And at least preliminarily resolve that to the point of perhaps giving counsel guidance as to whether the witness should return or not, if there is additional burden in having her come back.
Yes, I know, but so long as she's ordered by this court to return, then if I need her, she can come back. So I would ask the court to do that, order her and her attorney to return. Obviously, if we litigate it in advance of Thursday, and I'm hoping we will, and if at that point we no longer seek to have her testify, we'll call them off. Since
Right.
we have to pay to get them here, they won't be here unless we arrange it, so.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
So would you order?
Sure. Where should?
Ms. McPhee, would you stand up?
All right, you're excused, ordered to return August the
19th.
19th, this court at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you, Cynthia.
All right, you ready?
the court was also, I provided the court with a partial
You
transcript.
want to mark that as an exhibit? If
Yes.
you want to make it part of the record, we can make it exhibit.
I already marked the exhibits for this afternoon. Could we make his exhibit 134?
Have you already marked them?
Yes, I marked the tape and the transcript as 131 and 132 before you came out.
It should be 132 and 133.
Ah,
Oh,
so
wow,
it
it's
sounds like
close.
this is going to be
Okay, so could he,
Detective Zoller,
Tape
but
will be
in front of the Lyle Menendez
132,
jury
and
now.
the transcript 133, and this extra transcript, for identification purposes only, is 134.
okay, that's 131. This is 132. I did it right. I just read it wrong.
And the inquiry Mr. Burt had to do with what you could ask during cross-examination today of the witness.
Correct.
What is it that you wanted to ask?
Okay, I'm going to fast
At this
forward a little
point.
bit. Yeah, look, Corey, I agree. The two juries is
Perfectly
odd. It really is.
indicated, and
Okay, come on.
the court's ruling.
All right, let's get this going. Get this going. I'm so sorry, guys.
All right, you ready?
Oh, okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, then the new version will be submitted to the clerk, and she'll substitute that for the exhibit 43, and we'll replace it.
Your Honor,
And
as
Mr. Burt, as far as the,
Okay, continuing forward. We're
okay,
gonna
it'll be,
we're gonna find this. I promise.
Grace will be present. Before we get along, there's a question that I've been asking throughout.
Oh wait, let's see. Let me go back.
I have apologies to make for not getting to you yesterday afternoon and not getting to you this morning, but things got carried away and other matters had to be dealt with, and they took a little longer than anticipated. I'm sorry for that.
Okay, so I
We
think
have evidence at this point to offer, the people are offering as to the defendant, Lyle Menendez only. That's why we have you here
okay.
at this point. And then after that, there'll be testimony.
Here we
where
go.
both
So
juries
he's
will be
talking to Lyle
present.
Menendez's jury now.
Um,
Here we are. We found some
Before
more
we get along,
testimony.
there's a question that I've been asking throughout these proceedings, and I haven't had a chance to ask you lately, so let me do it now. Whether or not any of you have seen or heard anything about this case, other than what you've already told me in earlier proceedings. If you have, would you raise your hand? Anybody? All right, nobody has. Okay, then let's proceed with the trial, and the people may call their next witness.
People call Detective Zoller to the stand.
Anna B., thank you so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships to folks in the chat. It is so kind of you, so generous. And I see that you're on your way out, so thank you so much for doing that. So kind of you. Thank you. All right, we've got Detective Zoller
Leslie
back on the
H.
stand.
Zoller, Zoeller.
Detective Zoller, on the 17th of September of 1989, did you have a conversation with Lyle Menendez in the city of Cranberry in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I did.
Was it at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yes.
And was that conversation tape recorded?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, I have your tape, which I have previously marked as Exhibit 132. I also have a transcript of that tape, which has been marked as Exhibit 133. May those be so marked at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. And I have copies, 18 copies of the transcript. May I distribute those to the jurors, please?
Yes.
At this time, I'd like to play the tape, which has been marked as Exhibit 132. I believe there's a stipulation that the court reporter need not transcribe the tape.
Oh,
Thank you.
we have more tape testimony. No! Oh,
1989,
Oh,
time is 3 p.m. Myself and Detective Zoller, I'm Detective Lenningham, Beverly Hills Police Department, are conducting an interview with Lyle Menendez.
this really is talking into a tin
Identify the
can.
voices. Detective Zoller, I've started the tape, and there's an identification by Detective Lenningham. Was he your partner at that time?
Yes, he was.
And I take it your voice also appears on this tape?
Yes, it does.
In addition, was Lyle Menendez present?
Yes.
During the period of time that you had this interview, was it inside of a residence?
Yes, it was.
And do you recall whose residence it was where this tape was made?
Yes, it was Teresita and Carlos Baral's house.
And who are Teresita and Carlos Ferralt as they relate to this case, please?
Teresita is Jose Menendez's sister, and Carlos is her husband.
And
Okay, I very much appreciate that this direct examination is off to a much better start than the other version put on by Kuriyama. No offense to Mr. Kuriyama, but in this one, she's actually asking questions to sort of like set up a foundation for the jury to understand what it is that we are listening to and why there are other voices that you can hear in the background, and you know who else might be there. So it's just sort of like helping to like give some sort of context for this recording, and it's nice because then we're not just listening to a recording and being like, why are we listening to this?
at portions of this tape, is it apparent that there are other people in the household while
Yes.
the tape is made?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue now. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
His uncle's home in Cranberry, New Jersey. I'm gonna put this here because oh, he doesn't have that great of a microphone. I go to school this year, huh? I don't think I could. I'm gonna write this down and concentrate on anything else. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. What are you doing? Well, exactly. Yeah, well, just spend some time in school and your friends are, and then trying to come back and see you. Kind of and, yeah, I'm getting my mind off things in some ways, and then kind of at the same time, it's kind of like things that have to move right away. Meetings and there's a lot of stuff like that, putting the land down, just, and everything might be going in the west, but yeah, we'll probably going up there, because the house is getting more and more something. Your uncle was saying that Carol might buy that house. I think the company treated you as family. Unbelievable. Yeah, really, we talked to Margie.
Yeah, this would be much easier to listen to if we had the transcript with us.
Very clear about, just because go through that way. We spoke to Donovan from Princeton, Florida, last year. He left a message for us to basically get a hold of you. And Zoller and New York just got by where we were. And he wanted to make sure that you knew that when he was working at a place called Fox in Fourth Avenue, so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that he was there and he was giving him a call. So he had his phone number. That's a very nice guy. Okay. Questions again. I apologize again at a time. It's just things that questions that we have that we don't have the answers to. Saturday, you went fishing. You went deep sea fishing. Remember what time they went? The time you left? Yeah, we left on 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. fishing on Saturday. So that's it. There's a lot of good there. I'm sorry. Who was that? And what time did you return home? Almost at home. Wait, I mean, not that I'm getting through it, but it was very unusual. Maybe I could tell. Early Sunday morning? Yeah, early Sunday. Yeah. So, it was late. We got home and knew it was Saturday. Maybe more. Everybody was late on Sunday. 49 or 49. Don't do it. I don't really want to kind of all that. Sometimes I remember. What that is just put those first like highlights of
Okay, so here's a question. I'm pausing it real quick because I am not picking up anything from this audio recording. So I want to know from you guys. Let me know in the chat. Would you rather we just see it through and listen to the full audio, even if we can't pick up really much from it, or at least I can't? Or would you rather fast forward to where there's more substantive questioning going on? Because that, I think, is what I would rather do, is to fast forward through this, but I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the chat. I'll give a little bit. Do you guys, yeah, okay. So far I'm seeing skip it. So yeah, fast forward. Okay. Skip to, yeah. Got it. Okay. Let's all skip then. And so then I'm going to sort of skip ahead and then see if we can get to some questioning on this. Okay. I am glad that you guys were all on the same page here for that. Okay. Fast forward. Oh, geez. Okay. All right. All right. Fast forwarding. Going a few minutes at a time here. Okay. Oh, man. Yeah, I definitely agree that it's like if this were audible, I would absolutely want to be hearing this, but I definitely cannot hear it. So, what's the point in listening to it if we're not going to get Yeah. I
Mention of a company or a,
look. There's questions. Hang on.
Had an appointment.
1 second. Let's see. This is going to be the very end of it, I think. I feel like we just gained like an hour of our life back.
Time is 5 minutes to 4 on 17.
Detective Zoller, I just have a couple questions for you about the tape. When you went to the Baralt house that day, did you have an appointment with Lyle Menendez?
No, I did not.
Did you have an appointment with anybody at that house?
Yes.
And who was that with?
Had an appointment to see Mr. and Mrs. Baralt.
Did you have any knowledge before you got there that Lyle Menendez would even be there?
No, it was actually my impression that he was on the West Coast at the time.
In the tape, there's some mention of a person named Marzi. Was Marzi Mr. Menendez's secretary at the time of his death?
Yes.
There's also mention of a company or a concern called Carol Co. I think it was around page 25. Was Carol Co. the company that Mr. Menendez worked for? Or was it the owner of the company that Mr. Menendez worked for?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
All right.
Detective Zoller, was Erik Menendez present in the house when you were conducting this interview?
Yes.
And is it true that, as you just said, you went there to interview the aunt and uncle, correct?
That's correct.
Not knowing that either Erik or Lyle was there, correct?
That's correct.
And when you got inside the house, were you informed that Erik Menendez was upstairs sleeping?
Yes, that's correct.
They both
And is
were
it true
upstairs
that
sleeping.
at that time you asked the aunt and uncle to go get Erik to bring him down?
That's not correct as stated.
Could you tell me what the sequence was in terms of
During
how
the
you
interview,
came into contact with Erik Menendez?
yes, during the interview of Mrs. Baralt, we had mentioned that we, and by we, it's my partner, Detective Lenihan, and myself, we had not spoken to Erik or Lyle, and she had mentioned, oh, Erik's upstairs sleeping. Would you like me to wake him so you can interview him? And we said, yes.
All right. Did you interview the Baralts first, or did you proceed right to the interview with Erik?
No, we interviewed the Baralts first.
And you had a tape recorder with you when you walked into the house that day?
That's correct.
And the Baralt interview was not tape recorded, correct?
That's correct.
And then when you finished interviewing them, was Erik then brought down?
Yes.
And go
No,
ahead.
that's not correct.
What happened before?
Before Erik came down, we were still interviewing Mr. and Mrs. Baralt, and Lyle had driven up with a friend.
And did he walk into the house and see you and your partner sitting in the living room?
Yes.
And did you at that point indicate you wanted to speak with him?
Yes.
Did he indicate any reluctance in doing so?
No.
Did his friend stay there during the interview, or did he leave?
His friend went to another portion of the house.
And how about Erik? Where was he during the?
As far as I know, Erik was either still asleep or taking a shower or getting ready for the interview.
So is it basically true that as soon as Lyle came into the house, he sat down with you and began this interview?
Shortly after he came into the house, yes.
Right. And did you tell him it was going to be tape recorded? In other words, this was not a hidden recording device or anything of that nature?
That's correct. Tape recorder is placed on a coffee table in front of the three of us.
And he indicated no reluctance in having it tape recorded at that time?
He indicated none, no.
And during the period of time that you were interviewing him, did Erik come down?
I believe so, yes.
And was he listening to what Lyle was saying, or did he just kind of come and go?
I don't think there was that much of an overlap as far as time's concerned.
And then when you finished with Lyle, the tape recorder went off and you then began another interview with Erik at that point?
Yes.
Because I noticed at the end of the interview, Lyle says to you, you're asking him about, he makes a statement about Erik's gang-related thing, and then he says, well, I don't know. Ask Erik if he'd be honest. I asked Erik if he'd be honest with me, very open with me about everything, and we're close. Do you remember that statement?
Yes.
And was he basically referring you to Erik about this gang-related thing
Yes.
you had been talking about? By the way, the gang-related thing, which is referred to a couple of times in here, related to an incident that occurred in Calabasas in 1988, correct? Or thereabouts.
That's correct.
And had you been informed that the gang-related thing related to some incident that Erik Menendez had gotten himself into where a couple gang members had attacked him?
Yes.
You had learned that through checking for a police report out in Calabasas and discovering that, in fact, that had taken place?
Yes, that's correct.
And that's what's being referred to here, the gang-related thing.
Yes.
Was the possibility that the same gang that had attacked him might be involved in the killings themselves.
It was something to investigate, yes.
All right. And you had in your possession the police report at that time, where you had read the police report concerning that?
I believe so, yes.
And according to the transcript that you have in front of you and that the jury just looked at, Lyle basically referred you to Erik about that incident, correct?
That's correct.
Now, on page 19 of the transcript, do you have that there in front of you?
I do.
I think you make a statement along the lines of, that's all from somebody from either paid somebody off in the coroner's office. As far as we know, of course, we trust them as far as we trust anybody. But, they initially came out and said, oh, it looks like an OC death and so on and so forth. What were you referring to there?
The manner of the deaths, as far as I remember, the coroner's office put out the number of shots, wounds to each victim, and then I believe gave their opinion of what they thought, who was involved in it.
In other words, the coroner's office had issued a press release indicating their opinion that it was an organized crime hit, or words along those lines.
To what I remember, that's correct.
All right. And then you also make reference in the next couple of pages, right around page 19, to a lot of media attention that was being paid to the case, correct?
Correct.
And is it true that the media attention you were referring to was the coroner's theory that it was an organized crime hit, and the speculation that was going on in the media about that possibility?
I don't know whether that's what started it or not, but I know the press took off with that idea.
Okay, and there's mention at page 22 of the transcript of a person by the name of Noel Bloom. And your statement is, the news people have probably 100 investigative reporters that go out and they talk to Noel Bloom. You see that statement?
Yes.
And is that in reference to the fact that the media, there was some speculation in the media about whether a person by the name of Noel Bloom was connected with organized crime and may have been somehow connected to the killings?
Yes.
Again, these are theories that were being bantered about in the media when
That's
you were
correct.
investigating the case. And you were trying to assure Lyle in this interview of September 17th that you weren't responsible for generating that kind of publicity, basically, correct?
That's correct.
And is it true that that whole discussion about the media and what they were releasing and what the coroner was putting out there got going because Lyle seemed concerned about privacy, about keeping whatever happened private?
Yes, as indicated by one of his statements about what was released and his grandmother overhearing it or reading about it.
Okay. Page 14. There's a statement at line 13 by your partner in your presence. And your partner says, you said the day we were there, the morning you were there, you said that you slept up on the bed in the upstairs bedroom. Do you know what's being referred to there in terms of when you had a prior contact with Lyle Menendez?
I believe it was a statement that he made to Sergeant Edmonds.
The statement he made to Sergeant Edmonds, or the statement he made to you at the scene when I think you testified before you saw both Erik and Lyle come back to the house on the morning of the 21st?
I don't recall him saying that statement that morning. So he didn't make it in my presence.
Okay.
I assumed it was during the interview with Detective Sergeant Edmonds.
But your partner is saying the day we were there, the morning you were there, as if he's referring to the two of you being somewhere in the presence of Lyle Menendez, right? Would you agree that that appears to be the context? That
It appears so, yes.
Okay, but you just have no recollection of
That's
of
correct.
that. All right. And at page 20, lines 24 and 25, there's a statement by you. You were there later when the TV crews and all. What does that refer to?
That refers to either when he came at 5:30 in the morning or 8:30 in the morning, and the news crew was going up and down the street filming anybody that would move, basically.
And that would have been the morning of the 21st, correct?
That's correct.
You've testified about your contact with him before, I think. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
It's true, is it not, that as a result of that contact, you personally had some suspicions as early as the morning of August 21st? Suspicions of Lyle and Erik as possible suspects?
I think at that point there was nobody that wasn't suspicious.
But in your mind, their demeanor on that morning raised some suspicions in you, correct?
That's correct.
Right, and you still had those suspicions on September 17th when you conducted this interview, correct?
Correct.
There were several other theories that were being pursued, but one of your theories was that they were possibly involved.
I don't think that would be a true statement. They were under suspicion.
Page 20. Five, lines 18 through 21. Is that Lyle who says, I don't believe the organized crime thing until I see something?
That's correct.
And then you say that makes two of us, and your partner says makes three of us. We haven't seen any of it, correct?
That's correct.
And then on page 31, he says at the bottom of the page, at line 22, trying to teach us the value of money, but there were lots of fights. Is there any particular reason why you didn't follow up on that comment? That there were lots of fights between him and his father?
I thought it was clear that he had lots of fights about the money issue, spending money.
Okay. And on page 30, according to the transcript, you make a statement, your dad seems to like older women. Your dad seems to think that they were, and then he makes a statement. Is that correct?
I don't think that's correct, no.
What do you think you said there?
The inference of the conversation was that the girls that I previously mentioned in reference to Lyle were older women, and that his father didn't like Lyle seeing older women.
So when the transcript says your dad seems to like older women, you're probably saying there your dad seems not to like older women?
Not to like you with older women.
All right, and that was information you had obtained from the women themselves that you mentioned on the previous page. That is Jamie, Christy, and Charlene.
Not,
I would have fixed that if you hearsay.
not necessarily with speaking with them in person, but about them.
Okay. And on page 27, Lyle says that he met with a banker. Was there some reason why you didn't ask him who the banker was? Why you weren't interested in that?
Where are you referring to as far
This
as?
is line 6.
For what I remember, the context of the statement, it was just a statement in passing. I didn't really think that he was actually seeing a banker. That was my impression at the time, I believe.
All right, and then on page 26, line 24, there's a statement that says he's very confident. And it sounded to me like he was saying he's very powerful. Do you remember which one it was?
I don't. Can I just read a few lines so
Sure,
I get the
go
context,
ahead.
please? Your question again, please.
Is whether he is saying there he's very powerful as opposed to what it does say he's very confident.
I don't recall.
Now, at some point, you question him about hiring bodyguards, correct?
That's correct.
And he says to you at page 32, line 23, some security people felt that one of them was FBI. Do you recall that statement?
Yes.
And you then asked him who the security people were that the company had hired, correct?
I'm not sure whether I asked him. I just asked him who had hired. I don't think I said who the company had hired.
He told you the company had hired him and that he had not continued with them because it was too expensive. He wasn't going to pay for it.
That's correct.
And the company had stopped paying for it.
That's what he said. That's correct.
And he then gave you the name of the security company was D.B. Kelly, correct?
That's correct.
And based on him giving you that name, you then went and did some further investigation and spoke to Mr. Wenskowski, who testified here.
I don't know whether I had spoken to him before that or after that.
And did you also speak to a driver, a limo driver or a security driver who indicated to you that he had stated to Wenskowski that there was an FBI, he suspected there was an FBI person following him around?
Objection calls for hearsay.
You did interview Mr. Wenskowski, though?
That's correct.
And based on information he gave to you, did you interview a person named Richie who is a limo driver?
Yes.
And based on information that you obtained from him, did you feel you had corroboration of the statement of Lyle's that a limo driver had said something about an FBI person following him?
Objection calls for hearsay still.
Now, based on the content of this tape, did you feel that Lyle was trying to pretend that it was an organized crime hit based on the statements he made to you?
No.
In fact, he was indicating just the opposite, wasn't he?
That's correct.
And at any point in time, did you ask him if there was anything missing from the house?
I know that the issue of the camera came up, the video camera, and I don't know whether it was during this time or not. I believe it was.
Was there anything that he said to you that made you think he was trying to make you feel that a burglary had taken place and that there was lots of property missing?
No, he just indicated that the video camera was missing.
On page 33, line 14. That part of the transcript or the tape is hard to hear, but you're making a statement about, sounds like he was very serious, but you know the hospital wanted to talk to him while we were in New York, and he wouldn't speak to us because he was in the hospital, said he was sick. Who are you referring to there?
I don't recall his name. He was the prior owner of Strawberries, which is a record company that the company that Jose was in bought out.
Was that Morris Levy
Yes,
by any chance?
yes.
Okay, so you had gone to a hospital in New York, and that was basically a lead you were following up from this organized crime information that was in the media?
We wanted to talk to him, and we found out that he was in the hospital. We phoned the hospital to see whether we could interview him, and he denied us access to come to the hospital for an interview.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
I have one question. Detective Zoller, you indicated that when Lyle Menendez came to the house that he had a friend with him. Do you remember that?
Yes,
Do you know who the friend was?
yes, I do.
Who was it?
Greg Guest.
Thank you. I didn't say that.
Can we approach this for 1 second? Detective Zoller, I just had a couple more questions. Is it true that after you got done talking to Erik Menendez, well, let me back up. After you got done with your interview with Lyle, you then had a separate interview with Erik Menendez, correct?
That's correct.
And was Lyle out of the room during that time period?
Yes, he was.
Did there come a time when, near the end of your interview with Erik Menendez, where he walked back into the room?
Yes.
And at that time, did you and your partner have a further discussion with him about the Rolex watch that you had questioned him about earlier in the interview?
Yes.
And at that time, did you, without going into it in detail, basically indicate to him, caution him not to wear the watch when he was in LA because people often got robbed of Rolex watches?
Yes.
And at that time, did you tell him that people who rob those watches often sell them for $2,500?
Yes.
And in response to that statement by you or your partner, did he say something to the effect of, oh yeah, where could I sell mine for $2,500?
Yes, that's correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
I have a question. At the time that you had the conversation with Lyle Menendez about the Rolex watch, was he wearing it?
Yes, he was.
And do you remember what color it was? Was it silver or gold?
It was gold.
Thank you. That was the question.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. And at this point, we'll take our recess. We have some people in the jury room you might have heard who want to get out. And you folks take your break, and we'll resume at 25 minutes to the hour. Don't discuss this case with anyone.
Okay, so let's move on to the next witness, shall we? Indy has decided to go somewhere else entirely for some reason. I don't know where she went. Maybe she's like down the hallway, or maybe just snoozing on mine, Mr. Bite's bed. She sometimes does that. It's really cute. So yeah, in the meantime, let's get to the next witness. This is exciting. It's nice not having the same witness for like 5,000 years. Okay, so now we've got Bradley Brunon, who is, if I remember correctly, Dr. Oziel's attorney. So let's do it, shall we? And here's a question from Loquaria when it shows up on StreamYard. So does the second jury just have to wait in the jury room all day while the first one sits and vice versa? I think so. I believe that is what they have to do, unless it's like they're not going to be called back for the rest of the day, then they'll be let loose for the rest of the day. So that can happen too. Okay. Oop. There we go. So.
William Brunon, Brunon.
Mr. Brunon, what do you do for a living, please?
I'm an attorney.
And in 1989, was Dr. Jerome Oziel a client of yours?
He was.
Either on Halloween of 1989 or within a day or so of that date, Did Dr. Oziel call you with a matter of concern to
Can you
him?
object to that question? He's leading this.
That is a very 90s tie.
Overruled.
Yes, he did.
Now, do you have a specific recollection sitting here today of what the date was that Dr. Oziel called you?
Not exactly, no.
Do you remember that it was near or on Halloween, or do you have any recollection as to that?
My recollection has been refreshed within the last week as to that time period. Whether or not it was Halloween or the next day, I can't tell you, but it was.
Lily is
in
not a
that
big
period.
Halloween guy.
Could you see if you
I
can
feel like
move
he
the
would
microphone
remember
up,
if it was
please?
Halloween if
Okay,
he was a
thank you.
Halloween guy.
No, all right.
Higher?
All right, Mr. Brunon, when Dr.
like,
Oziel called you, were you at your home or your office? if you
Sorry.
recall?
Sorry, kind of like how Dr. Lula was like, yeah, I was out trick-or-treating with my kids when I got a phone call. So he's like, yeah, I remember it was definitely Halloween. So we just learned about him. He's clearly not a fan of Halloween. Lawyers, man.
I was at home.
And would you describe his demeanor? That is, how did he sound to you on the phone?
Okay, I didn't see him, but he sounded excited, anxious. He was speaking more rapidly than he normally did, or than I had normally been accustomed to hearing him. And he seemed to have some tension in his voice.
Now, at that time, in either October or early November of 1989, approximately how many years had you known Dr. Oziel?
In 1989, I had known him probably 4 or 5 years.
What did he say to you when he called you that day, or that evening, pardon me?
I don't remember exactly how he began the conversation, and I don't remember the conversation sequence by sequence, sentence by sentence, but he informed me that he had clients who had admitted to him that they had committed a serious offense. And after they had told him of the offense, they had said to him or made statements to him that he took to be threatening. And he wanted to know what he could do under the circumstances. What were his options? What did I think about that?
What did you tell him?
Well, I asked for more information, and the conversation was not as sequential as this, but I asked him a little bit, how serious was the offense? And he said, well, it's the most serious. It's murder. All right. What does he know about it? And he said, well, there's not much evidence. His understanding was that the facts had not been developed.
Object to the statement about his understanding.
Are you relating what was told to you by Mr. Oziel?
I am, Your Honor.
All right, objection overruled.
And I asked him how serious he felt the threats were, and he said he felt that they were serious. So, well, here are the options as I see them at this point. You can call the police, and the police will either act at this point or not act. Depends on the balance of the facts. And since I don't know the facts, I can't tell you whether or not they would act. If they do act, then his patients would be arrested. And so at that point, they would present less of a threat to him. If the police, for whatever reason, elected not to act at that time, the investigation hadn't developed far enough, or it was still under active investigation. There's all variety of reasons why they might not act even with a confession. Then if that information came to light, he would be in peril. And I discussed with him the impracticality of having a full-time bodyguard for himself and his family. He has a wife and 2 children, and it's just impossible to have full-time armed protection.
Let me interrupt you and ask another question, Mr. Brunon. Aside from the option of calling the police or hiring a bodyguard, did you discuss any other options with him?
Well, the conversation evolved. I explained the balance of the system, how it would work, that even if the police acted, you couldn't accurately predict what the prosecution would do at that point. Because once an arrest is made, certain time limits start applying, and they may not elect to file at that point, and so he would be in danger.
Now, by file, could you just explain what you mean about filing?
After an arrest is made, essentially in most instances, on the belief by the officer that a crime has been committed, reasonable suspicion, reasonable belief. The prosecution then reviews the facts that the police present to them and make an election to file the case because the facts present potential of a criminal prosecution. And in Los Angeles County, my understanding of the filing criteria is that the district attorney wants to have sufficient facts at the time of filing from which they can prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. They don't use a reasonable suspicion filing standard. They use a...
Object to that, John. To strike his conclusion. He doesn't want to do it.
Well, the objection is sustained as far as the conclusion of the witness. At this point, we want to confine ourselves to what it was he told Dr. Oziel.
I'll continue then. Mr. Brunon, do you have a specialty as a lawyer?
I do.
And what is your specialty?
I'm a certified specialist in criminal law, and I have practiced only criminal and administrative law for 23 years.
And just so you guys know that when somebody says that they are a certified specialist in California, that is a very specific thing. You have to go through extra certification, basically like a second bar exam, but a bar exam that focuses only on that specific area of law. So it's pretty rare for someone to become a specialist in a certain area of law in California. And when they do, they have had to jump through some major hoops. So I will say that when it comes to criminal law, I would very much like just me knowing what I know about that I think commends a lot of respect for this attorney and for his professional opinions.
Mr. Brunon, did you explain to Dr. Oziel the procedures by which a case may or may not find its way into the system?
I did. And
what else did you advise him?
that was basically it in terms of the system, that I just couldn't tell him with any degree of certainty what would happen if he revealed the communications to the police or other prosecutorial authority. And we discussed briefly witness protection, and that also was impractical because of his profession, his property ownership, the circle of friends that he has, and business acquaintances. Witness protection was out of the question. And so we eventually, the discussion evolved to the point that he would maintain contact with his patients and monitor the relationship so that if he felt that the peril was too great, that there was something imminent that was to occur, then he would consider changing his tactic. But in the meantime, he would try to maintain continuous evaluation of the situation.
And when you say, I think you said something like monitor his patients, are you saying the people that he had referred to as having made these statements to him earlier and threatened him?
Yes.
Okay. Now, on March the 8th of 1990, several months after you had this phone call with Dr. Oziel, were you called to his home in, I think it's Sherman Oaks?
Yes, I was.
And when you got there, was Detective Zoller there along with some other personnel from the Beverly Hills Police Department and other agencies?
Yes. All right, we'll resume.
Mr. Brunon, on March the 8th of 1980, did you get called to Dr. Oziel's home in Sherman Oaks?
Did you say 1980?
I'm sorry, I meant to say 1990.
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, were the police there executing the search warrant?
Yes.
Were items seized pursuant to that search warrant?
I know there were, but I didn't. Well, yes, I saw some items there as well.
All right. Now, in the summer of 1990, did Dr. Oziel assert the privilege as to matters that were taken, as to items that were taken from his home during the execution of the search warrant in March?
Yes, he did.
And did he hire you to represent him in that proceeding?
I was already representing him, but I continued to represent him in that regard as well.
On or about December the 7th of 1992, did Dr. Oziel testify in front of the grand jury?
He did.
And was a court order required by you for him before he testified? Let me rephrase it. Did you ask the prosecution to get a judge to sign a court order ordering him to testify?
Well, I told you, I believe it was you, that Dr. Oziel would not testify except upon court order.
And was that provided to you?
It was.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, cross-examination.
Mr. Brunon, as a certified criminal law specialist, are you familiar with Evidence Code Section 1015?
I don't have them memorized. I'm sure I know the content,
Could I show it to you to refresh your memory?
Typical, normal.
if you like.
Yeah, I have this one.
Who would, I mean, seriously, who would have the criminal code
Do we have the
memorized?
same ones? Oh, yes, 1015.
Could you tell us really what that says?
That's a section in a group of sections dealing with privileges, and that requires a psychotherapist, someone who is a privilege holder, such as a psychotherapist, such as a psychologist, as Dr. Oziel is, to claim the privilege in the event some third party wants to know about a confidential communication.
For instance, if a court or district attorney asks Dr. Oziel to come to court and testify, he's legally obligated to claim the privilege under that section, right?
If he's asked to testify about a communication from a patient that is not accepted, yes.
Okay. And I think you said you had known Dr. Oziel 4 or 5 years before 1989. Is that correct?
Approximately.
Could you tell us how you came to know him?
Sustain.
Could I approach on that, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Brunon, is it true that you first were introduced to Dr. Oziel in regard to a situation before the licensing board involving an individual named Court Day?
I'm not sure that that's when I first met him, no.
Is it true that you represented him in settlement negotiations that related to the Court Day litigation?
That is true.
And you, in fact, negotiated a settlement in that case?
I did.
And did you continue to represent him on other matters after the Court Day litigation?
I don't know if I recall anything else coming up, but I continued a relationship with him thereafter.
Was that a professional relationship or also a social one?
Not so. We're friends. I mean, we're friendly. I like him. And so we have that relationship. He calls me from time to time if an issue comes up. But, well, does that answer your question?
Well, did you represent him on other litigation or licensing board matters other than Court Day in the period before 1989 when he made this telephone call to you?
Sustain.
Did you represent him on any matter in late October, November 1989 when he called you?
I don't believe no, not at that time.
In other words, you had nothing outstanding with him at that point?
No.
And is it true that you have represented Dr. Oziel in this case? That is, as a witness, you've appeared in this court and represented his interests before this court. Isn't that true?
Yes, I have attempted to.
And you've also represented his interests in other courts relating to this case, correct?
I have.
You filed litigation for him involving service of the search warrant, for instance.
We tendered that so that you all could resolve it. We did tender that, yes. We didn't litigate it, but we tendered it.
Well, you filed a separate lawsuit about protecting a videotape of the search warrant services.
Well, that was for his own private interest.
Right.
The news.
I don't want to go into the
All right.
details. I just
But yes, I did.
And you have appeared in this court, in Judge Weisberg's court, on several occasions and argued on behalf of Dr. Oziel, have you not?
I think 2 occasions.
And there are also other lawyers currently representing Dr. Oziel, correct, in civil matters?
Sustain.
Do you know if there are other lawyers in the courthouse right now who represent Dr. Oziel or who were here earlier today?
Sustain.
Now, Mr. Brunon, have you told us to the best of your recollection everything that you remember about this conversation you had with Dr. Oziel?
No.
Is there anything else that you can remember about the conversation?
Yes.
Could you tell us what else he said to you when you had this conversation
All right.
that you consider not privileged? Not asking for privileged information.
I understand, and I'm considering the entire conversation to be unprivileged. The one thing that wasn't asked, or the one additional thing that may be material, is that during the course of the conversation, he brought up the idea of preparing a tape recording or some sort of a communication that he would place in the hands of a third party and advise the patients of its existence and its content, which would be a summary of the statements that had been made to him, the confession. And he asked me what I thought about that, and I thought that had some efficacy in perhaps protecting him from some untoward events.
Now, you said your memory was refreshed as to the time of this conversation by something you saw or looked at last week, was it?
Either the end of last week, the weekend, Monday or Tuesday, sometime after Dr. Oziel began his testimony.
And what was it that you saw that refreshed your memory as to the date of this conversation?
It's not the date so much as the time frame. And I have 3 sources of data on that. I talked.
Well, the question has to do with what refreshed his recollection. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Are you answering that?
I'm trying to. I don't know mechanically what caused the synapse in my brain to cause me to remember it, but I talked to Dr. Oziel after he had testified about it to learn the parameters of his testimony because of the attorney-client privilege. I needed to know what the scope of his testimony was so I could guide my testimony. That helped me recall when it occurred.
All right, let me stop you right there. When you say the parameters, do you mean Dr. Oziel told you the dates? Are we talking time parameters?
I don't. Well, also the scope of the testimony, how much he testified about that conversation. I don't know. I wanted to know if he just said he had a conversation or if he went into the contents of it with me so that I would know whether or not I could go into the contents of it. And I don't recall if he mentioned the date, if I saw it in the newspaper, or if I saw it on one of the newscasts of it. But wherever I saw it or heard it, it struck a bell with me. Yes, that's when it did occur.
All right. So let me ask, is there anything else you used to refresh your memory other than what you just referred to?
No.
Now, is it true that you didn't take any notes of this conversation?
That is true.
Did you bill him for that particular session? And
No,
I don't mean that offensively. I'm trying to establish the dates here.
No, I didn't bill him for that.
And do you know what your office telephone number was on the date that you received that call?
I do, but he called me at home.
And what, if you don't mind telling us, would you mind telling us what your telephone number was?
Well, I don't know. Assuming it's the same phone number?
It is, but I don't think it would help you because it was in Santa Monica and it's a local call.
And he was in, at that time, Beverly Hills.
That was my understanding.
And do you remember the time that the call came in?
It was in the evening. My best guess would be 9 or 10 o'clock. It was not 7, 8 o'clock. It was later than that, 9 or 10 o'clock, maybe even a little bit later.
And from the time you received that call up until today, how many conversations have you had with Dr. Oziel concerning the events that you testified about here today, would you say?
Could we be more specific as to which events you're talking about? You're talking about
about the telephone conversation that you testified about here today.
The conversation continued. There was a first conversation, and then we had subsequent conversations immediately thereafter in the next week, 10 days, just to see how it was developing. Then we didn't talk about it until this past week.
All right. And when you were representing him, you represented him in the Santa Monica Superior Court during proceedings there, correct?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
You actually appeared in the Superior Court and was there as Dr. Oziel was testifying. Isn't that true?
I don't think I attended his testimony. I think an associate from my office did.
Did you ever discuss with him during that time period, that is a period of time when the litigation was going on in Santa Monica, the events that you've testified about here today concerning the conversation?
Not to my recollection. I don't believe I did.
And could you tell me how seeing the date or having this conversation with Dr. Oziel pinned in your mind when the conversation took place that you testified about?
I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Could you explain to me how seeing something in the newspaper or talking to Dr. Oziel allowed you to bring back in your mind within a 2-day period when this conversation took place?
Well, I was familiar in general terms with the sequence of events, the homicide in August, the search warrant in March. So that gave me the outside parameters. And I don't know the mental process of how it did it. All I know is that after I heard that, it sounded right. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. I don't have an independent recollection of looking at the calendar, for example.
In other words, did the information sound right, or did the date sound right, or did they both sound right?
Both.
Now, is there anything, can you say it was on October 31st?
Not with absolute certainty, no.
Can you say it was on November 1st?
I can't say what day it was with absolute certainty. I can say it was in that time with a high degree of certainty.
And can it be as late as a week after November 1st?
I don't think it was that late.
And can you tell us why you can eliminate that with a high degree of certainty?
Because of the planning and preparation. Well, there were certain things that he said he was going to do, which was, the main thing was the preparation of the tape and the evolution of that. And I know approximately when the tapes were created, so it was before the creation of the tapes.
How do you know when the tapes were created? Could I rephrase the
Yes.
question?
Whoa.
Sure.
One defense attorney objecting to the other defense attorney. That's interesting.
Mr. Brunon, do you know, based on your recollection of that conversation, whether Dr. Oziel had talked to anyone else? Did he say that you were the first person he was contacting regarding this?
Objection, Peg. Are we talking about the conversation on or about October 31st?
Well, whatever date it was, the first time he called you about this.
He said he had talked to someone else.
Did he say who that was?
I don't now recall if he did or didn't.
And did he say that the patient or patients had confessed to him?
He did.
Did he present it to you as a hypothetical case, or did he name names?
He did. I knew who he was talking about. I don't think he named names
How did you know who he was talking about?
because I had read the paper. I was
news.
familiar with the facts of the case. I knew that Lyle and Erik were his patients.
And so did he begin by saying the patients, and then you said, I know who you're talking about?
I don't think he ever said the names. I don't know if I said the names. I believe I said, I think I know who you're talking about.
Right. And at some point during the conversation, that it was not just a hypothetical situation. The two of you were discussing this case, correct?
Well, we were discussing what became this case, and no, I didn't treat it as hypothetical.
And did he tell you the details of the confession?
No.
Did he say to you that he was threatened?
Yes.
Did he say to you that anybody else was threatened?
No.
And I think you said that at the end of the conversation, correct?
So that's different from what Dr. Oziel said, because he said that he felt that not only he was threatened, but that his wife and kids were threatened and that his girlfriend was threatened. So that's interesting. It's also interesting that he had already made the decision to disclose the information to someone else before talking to the attorney. When I would think that the more prudent way to go about it is to talk to the attorney first to say, hey, is this something that I, A, am allowed to disclose, and B, am required to disclose based on your knowledge of the rules in California? So it is interesting that he had already told someone else. Now that other person may have been Dr. Lulo, but if it wasn't Dr. Lulo, if it was anybody other than him, then that's a big red flag, in my opinion. There was something else that I think I was going to say, but I can't remember now. So I will continue with testimony.
Correct me if I'm wrong, that a resolution of some kind was reached that he would continue in the relationship with the patient and monitor, I think is the word you used. Do you recall that?
I did use that word, and resolution probably is too concrete of a word, of a term, or may imply that we had figured out exactly what he was going to do, and that wasn't the case. What I left it. I said, I can tell you legally what may or may not happen, based on what you're telling me and my familiarity with the legal system. I can tell you, we'd already acknowledged that he could report it because of the threat that had been communicated. I didn't know his relationship to the patients. And I said, you're just going to have to make the call yourself, because I can't predict that. I don't know the people you're talking about. I don't know them as well as you do, so I can't evaluate it. So you're just going to have to make that decision as to what you actually do.
And do you remember what you said about calling the police?
I said that was one of the things he could do.
And did you tell him that the police or the prosecution, once in possession of the confession, that there would not be a conviction? That
No.
There was no chance there would be a conviction if he handed over a confession?
No, I said I told him I didn't know what the outcome would be, because I didn't know the balance of the case. And it has been my experience that a confession is, highly material evidence, but it is not always determinative.
Right.
And I tried to convey that to him.
But did you ever say to him that, based upon your experience as a criminal law attorney, that based upon the evidence that he said was existent, that it was at best the flip of a coin whether there would ever be a conviction? Did you ever make that statement to him?
I don't know. I attempted to convey to him that it was impossible to predict what would happen with any precision, that they may or may not arrest, they may or may not indict or file a complaint. And after that, what happens in the system is anybody's guess.
And you have no specific recollection of telling him that if there was a confession, it would be a flip of a coin as to whether anybody would be convicted?
I don't recall using those words. I could have said something in that sense.
And was that based on your knowledge that the the reliability of a confession turned somewhat on the source of who was saying the person confessed?
Judge calls for an opinion for which he's not being offered an expert.
Objection sustained.
Did you tell Dr. Oziel that, based on your experience, confessions, especially from unreliable sources, were sometimes not trustworthy and not good evidence? Words to that effect.
No, I wouldn't have said anything like that.
You said in your direct examination that Dr. Oziel said to you that there was not much evidence. Do you recall that testimony?
That he told me that was his understanding.
And did he indicate what evidence there was, if you remember? If you don't.
You're talking about other than the confession?
Yeah.
No, he didn't. I don't recall him doing that.
He may have, you just don't recall.
I don't think he did. Nothing rings a bell as to what he may have said. And my understanding independently of that at that time was that there was not a whole lot of evidence.
I'm not asking for your understanding. I'm asking what he told you.
I don't recall him elaborating on what evidence, if any, existed at that time.
Thank you.
All right, cross-examination on behalf of Erik Menendez.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, before we get into this, there is a question that has come up in the chat. Thank you for asking it, Elise Lynch, asking about why is there so much focus on Dr. Oziel? Well, the prosecution has relied upon him quite a bit, basically as this smoking gun for this case. So, because the brothers did apparently admit to Dr. Oziel during some therapy sessions that they had killed their parents, and basically gave all kinds of detail about how they did it, what they did afterwards, all of that stuff. And so the only way in which he was able to disclose any of that information is if he felt that he was under he had a reasonable feeling that his life or the life of others was at risk if he did not disclose that information. So he then bought a bunch of guns and all this kind of stuff. He told a handful of people about it. The police ended up finding out, and that's how we ended up where we are today. So it really was kind of crucial, at the very least in the timeline of events, for how things turned out the way that they did. But I'm told that in the second trial, because I'm sorry, spoiler alert, this does end in a mistrial. The trial that follows this is not televised, so we don't have any footage to look over. They apparently did not call Dr. Correct me, chat. Folks in the chat that are very familiar with this case, correct me if I'm wrong about it, but they didn't call him in the second one, and that was where they ended up securing convictions for both of the defendants. So, yeah, so they relied very heavily on him, and there was this whole thing of like him thinking that he had a reasonable reason to fear for his own life and the life of others. And that's why they're calling his attorney, because he was the person that he talked to get counsel on that. He also called Dr. Lulo to get counsel on that, so we heard from him. And but then there's other stuff involving like why did he need to tell the girlfriend, for example? Like there's a really big question there. I really personally don't think that he needed to tell the girlfriend. I think that was just an excuse to go and stay with the girlfriend, in my opinion. So we are going to hear from the girlfriend, apparently. That's what folks in the chat have said. And I am very much looking forward to that, because it's like, this is like a mini trial. Is Dr. Oziel almost being on a mini trial here? Because there are a lot of things that he did that really are a little bit, they don't exactly add up. So I'm still not fully convinced that he actually reasonably felt that his life was in danger. I think he had other reasons for telling a number of people like he did. I don't know exactly what those reasons are, but I don't think that they are because he actually feared for his life. That's just my personal opinion. So yeah. So anyway, so to the extent that the prosecution is relying on him, they really want him to come out looking like a credible witness. And so far, in my opinion, he doesn't. I know that's I think probably most of the people in the chat that have been following along so far are feeling the same way. So yeah, I hope that answers your question a little bit. And yeah, okay. Let's continue on.
Mr. Brunon, you made a certain assumption here that Dr. Oziel, on whatever night this was, called you from his office, correct?
I assumed that he called me from Beverly Hills.
Well, that's what I just said. You assumed that, correct?
You said office. I said Beverly Hills.
All right. Well, did he live in Beverly Hills?
He lived over the hill from Beverly Hills.
Okay. Did you think he was calling you from his office?
I didn't form an opinion at that time as to where he was calling me from.
All right. Then let's assume, just for the sake of this question, that you don't know where he was calling from, correct?
Okay.
All right. And therefore, where you lived, Santa Monica, could well have been a toll call from wherever he was calling from.
It could have been.
And because this is being televised, I don't want to ask you openly for your telephone number, but I would ask you to write it down on a piece of paper.
I will be happy to do that for
Thank
you.
May I approach him?
Yes.
And may I mark this piece of paper that Mr. Brunon is going to mark? Next in order, though I don't know what that is.
136.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I request that this not be released to the media?
Yes. You may request that.
Well, since I have no standing, I can't move for it, I suppose.
Okay. I will take this away. Thank you, Mr. Brunon.
You're welcome.
During the course, well, strike that. You said you had known Dr. Oziel for some time and that you were friendly with him. Did you know Judelon Smith as of Halloween of 1989?
I can say that as of this moment, I do not know Judelon Smith.
Had you ever heard her name mentioned to you by Dr. Oziel before October 31st, 1989?
Sustained.
Well, Your Honor, this is just foundational.
Objection sustained.
Did he tell you during the course of this conversation that he had told all the details of the supposed confession to Adjutant Smith before he ever talked to you?
He didn't tell me that.
Did he tell you that he had told the details to a girlfriend?
No, he didn't tell me that.
Did he tell you that he had told the details to a business associate?
No, you're still talking about Miss Smith, I take it?
Let's just say he might have used those words. Did he tell you that he had told anybody?
He told me that he had discussed it with either other lawyers or other
Therapists.
therapists, I don't know, psychiatrists or psychologists, but other people trained in that area. And
Did he ask your advice on whether he should tell a woman that he was having an affair with about this supposed confession in order to protect her?
he did not ask me that, no.
Thank you, Mr. Brunon.
You're welcome.
All right, any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, in discussing the scheduling with counsel, there are some matters that the lawyers and I will be discussing a little bit more this afternoon and then tomorrow morning. So we're optimistically expecting to be ready with more evidence at 10:30 tomorrow morning. So we ask that both juries return at that time to your respective jury rooms. Don't discuss this matter with anyone or form any final opinions about it. And we'll see you back here tomorrow at 10:30. Hopefully by then we'll have finished our discussions and be ready to proceed with further evidence. All right, the jurors have left and counsel indicate they have some brief evidence you want to offer.
Well, I think that probably is a good place to pause it for today, actually. So let's do it, shall we? Okay, so, that last witness was a little, not quite as spicy, even though he's talking about Dr. Oziel. I mean, you can kind of expect that from a lot of attorneys testifying. They're going to be very careful about their words. They're going to be very, they're gonna understand the process, especially a criminal law attorney who probably has been in trial quite a bit himself. So his testimony is probably going to be relatively smooth, right? Yeah. Anyway, not too much craziness there, and not too much craziness through Detective Zoller either. Hi, Indy. Hi, puppy. Hi, what's up? What's going on? Yeah, not too much craziness with either one. So next week we will probably have, let's see, this should tell us. So we've got Henry Yanio and Stephen Goldberg will be taking the stand. I don't know who either of those people are, but I'm sure that there are folks in the chat who do know, who will be able to fill people in. But otherwise we'll get to it on Monday, and that'll be that. So, Andy, you want to say bye-bye? She wants more treats. That's what she wants. Yeah, you always want more treats. I know you. Okay. So yeah, you guys, thank you so much for another wonderful Menendez Monday. And you guys have been great. This has been another interesting day. We are progressing through this trial, and yeah, it moves a lot faster when you've got more witnesses in one day, right? Okay. I think that for me about does it. Thank you to everybody in the chat for wonderful discussion. And thank you, of course, to the mods for always helping to guide discussion in such a great fashion. And I will see you guys in the next video.